हेलो फ्रेंड्स, नमस्ते, आदाब, सत श्री अकाल। मैं प्रोफेसर दत्तात्रेय गोड़के आप सभी का फिर से एक बार स्वागत करता हूँ आपके चहेते शो में, जिसका नाम है रीड विद मी। चलिए कुछ अच्छा सुनते हैं। सो फार वी हैव कंप्लीटेड मेनी ऑफ द बुक्स which includes Ikigai, the Japanese method for happy and long life, Inner Engineering, a yogi's guide, followed by How to take back control of your life, then the power of your subconscious mind, the power of positive thinking, and in a recent few episodes we have started reading a very special book entitled as Think and Grow Rich, which is written by Napoleon Hill. Already, regarding as far as this book is concerned, already we have completed reading first 6 chapters, which comprise of the part 1 reading of this Think and Grow Rich and part 2. In today's episode, we are going to read next 3 chapters, which are comprising of part 3. Before moving ahead in part 3, let me congratulate all of you and let me express my sincere gratitude towards all of you for showering a love for this Read With Me show. Okay, in very short span of time, you have given a lot of encouragement and lot of support to me as well as our team to come up with more and more audiobooks, and in coming time you are going to receive many of the audiobooks which are recommended by you through our YouTube channel. In order to receive those notifications, please once again I will request earnestly, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss the notification regarding the new audiobook. तो चलिए शुरुआत करते हैं with the next chapter of this very special book, which is entitled as Think and Grow Rich, which is written by Napoleon Hill. Let us get started with chapter number 7, Organized Planning. The crystallization of desire into action, the 6th step towards riches. You have learned that everything man creates or acquires begins in the form of desire. That desire is taken to the first lap of its journey from the abstract to the concrete into the workshop of the imagination, where the plans for its transition are created and organized. In chapter 2, you were instructed to take 6 definite practical steps as your first move in translating the desire for money into its monetary equivalent. One of these steps is the formation of a definite practical plan or plans through which this transformation may be made. You will now be instructed how to build plan which will be practical, which are: first, ally yourself with a group of as many people as you may need for the creation and carrying out of your plan or plans for the accumulation of money, making use of mastermind principle described in a later chapter. Compliance with this instruction is absolutely essential. Do not neglect it. Second, before forming your mastermind alliance, decide what advantages and benefits you may offer the individual members of your group in return for their cooperation. No one will work indefinitely without some form of compensation. No intelligent person will either request or expect another to work without adequate compensation, although this may not always be in the form of money. Third, arrange to meet with the members of your mastermind group at least twice a week, and more often if possible, until you have jointly perfected the necessary plan or plans for the accumulation of money. Fourth one, maintain perfect harmony between yourself and every member of your mastermind group. If you fail to carry out this instruction to the latter, you may expect to meet with a failure. The mastermind principle cannot obtain where perfect harmony does not prevail. Keep in mind these facts. First, you are engaged in an undertaking of major importance to you. To be sure of success, you must have plans which are faultless. Second, you must have the advantage of the experience, education, native ability, and imagination of other minds. This is in harmony with the methods followed by every person who has accumulated a great fortune. No individual has a sufficient experience, education, native ability, and knowledge to ensure the accumulation of a great fortune without the cooperation of other people. Every plan you adopt in your endeavor to accumulate wealth should be the joint creation of yourself and every other member of your mastermind group. You may originate your own plans either in whole or in part, but see that those plans are checked and approved by the members of your mastermind alliance. If the first plan which you adopt does not work successfully, replace it with a new plan. If this new plan fails to work, replace it in turn with still another, and so on until you find a plan which does work. Right here is the point at which the majority of men met with failure because of their lack of persistence in creating new plans to take the place of those which failed. The most intelligent man living cannot succeed in accumulating money nor in any other undertaking without plans which are practical and workable. Just keep this fact in mind and remember, when your plans fail, that a temporary defeat is not permanent failure. It may only mean that your plans have not been sound. Build other plans, start all over again. Thomas A. Edison failed 10,000 times before he perfected the incandescent electric light bulb. That is, he met with a temporary defeat 10,000 times before his efforts were crowned with success. Temporary defeat should mean only one thing: the certain knowledge that there is something wrong with your plan. Millions of men go through life in misery and poverty because they lack a sound plan through which to accumulate a fortune. Henry Ford accumulated a fortune not because of his superior mind, but because he adopted and followed a plan which proved to be sound. 1,000 men could be pointed out, each with a better education than Ford's, yet each of whom lives in poverty because he does not possess the right plan for the accumulation of money. Your achievement can be no greater than your plans are sound. That may seem to be an asymptotic statement, but it is true. Samuel Insull lost his fortune of over $100 million. The Insull's fortune was built on the plans which were sound. The business depression forced Mr. Insull to change his plans, and the change brought temporary defeat because his new plans were not sound. Mr. Insull is now an old man. He may consequently accept failure instead of temporary defeat. But if his experience turns out to be failure, it will be for the reason that he lacks the fire of persistence to rebuild his plans. No man is never whipped until he quits in his own mind. This fact will be repeated many times because it is so easy to take the count at the first sign of defeat. James J. Hill met with a temporary defeat when he first endeavored to raise the necessary capital to build a railroad from the east to west, but he too turned defeat into the victory through new plans. Henry Ford met with a temporary defeat not only at the beginning of his automobile career, but after he had gone far toward the top. He created new plans and went marching on to financial victory. We see men who have accumulated great fortunes, but we often recognize only their triumph, overlooking the temporary defeat which they had to surmount before arriving. No follower of this philosophy can reasonably expect to accumulate a fortune without experiencing temporary defeat. When a defeat comes, accept it as a signal that your plans are not sound. Rebuild those plans and set sail once more towards your coveted goal. If you give up before your goal has been reached, you are a quitter. A quitter never wins and a winner never quits. I need to repeat this. A quitter never wins and a winner never quits. Lift this sentence out, write it on a piece of paper in a letters an inch high and place it where you will see it every night before you go to sleep and every morning before you go to work. When you begin to select members of your mastermind group, endeavor to select those who do not take defeat seriously. Some people foolishly believe that only money can make money. This is not true. Desire transmuted into its monetary equivalent through the principles laid down here is the agency through which money is made. Money of itself is nothing but inert matter. It cannot move, think, or talk, but it can hear when a man who desires it calls it to come. Planning the sale of services. The remainder of this chapter has been given over a description of ways and means of marketing personal services. The information here conveyed will be of practical help to any person having any form of personal services to market, but it will be of a priceless benefit to those who aspire to leadership in their chosen occupations. Intelligent planning is essential for success in any undertaking designed to accumulate riches. Here will be found detailed instruction to those who must begin the accumulation of riches by selling personal services. It should be encouraging to know that practically all the great fortunes began in the form of compensation for personal services or from the sale of ideas. What else except ideas, personal services would one not possessed of poverty have to give in return for riches? Broadly speaking, there are two types of people in the world. One type is known as leaders and the other as followers. Broadly speaking, there are two types of people in the world. One type is known as leaders and the other as followers. Decide at the outset whether you intend to become a leader in your chosen calling or remain a follower. The difference in compensation is vast. The follower cannot reasonably expect the compensation to which a leader is entitled, although many followers make the mistake of expecting such pay. It is no disgrace to be a follower. On the other hand, it is no credit to remain a follower. Most great leaders began in the capacity of followers. They became great leaders because they were intelligent followers. With a few expectations, the man who cannot follow a leader intellectually cannot become an efficient leader. The man who can follow a leader most efficiently is usually the man who develops into leadership most rapidly. An intelligent follower has many advantages, among them the opportunity to acquire knowledge from his leader. The major attributes of leadership. The following are important factors of leadership. First, unwavering courage based upon knowledge of self and of one's occupation. No follower wishes to be dominated by a leader who lacks self-confidence and courage. No intelligent follower will be dominated by such a leader very long. Second, self-control. The man who cannot control himself can never control others. Self-control sets a mighty example for one's followers, which the more intelligent will emulate. Third, a keen sense of justice. Without a sense of fairness and justice, no leader can command and retain the respect of his followers. Fourth, definiteness of a decision. The man who wavers in his decisions shows that he is not sure of himself. He cannot lead others successfully. Fifth one, definiteness of plans. The successful leader must plan his work and work his plan. A leader who moves by guesswork without practical definite plans is comparable to a ship without a rudder. Sooner or later, he will land on the rocks. Sixth, the habit of doing more than paid for. One of the penalties of leadership is the necessity of willingness upon the part of the leader to do more than he requires of his followers. 7. A pleasing personality. No slovenly, careless person can become a successful leader. Leadership calls for respect. Followers will not respect a leader who does not grade high on all of the factors of pleasing personality. 8. Sympathy and understanding. The successful leader must be in sympathy with his followers. Moreover, he must understand them and their problems. 9. Mastery of detail. Successful leadership calls for mastery of details of the leader's position. 10th one, willingness to assume full responsibility. The successful leader must be willing to assume responsibility for the mistake and the shortcomings of his followers. If he tries to shift this responsibility, he will not remain the leader. If one of his followers makes a mistake and shows himself incompetent, the leader must consider that it is he who failed. 11th one, cooperation. The successful leader must understand and apply the principles of cooperative effort and be able to induce his followers to do the same. Leadership calls for power and power calls for cooperation. I need to repeat all these points as far as leadership traits are concerned. Okay, the following are important factors of leadership. First, unwavering courage. Second, self-control. Next, a keen sense of justice, definiteness of decision, definiteness of plans, the habit of doing more than paid for, a pleasing personality, sympathy and understanding, mastery of detail, willingness to assume full responsibility, cooperation. There are two forms of leadership. The first and by far the most effective is leadership by consent of and with the sympathy of followers. The second is leadership by force without the consent and sympathy of the followers. Democratic leader and autocratic leader. History is filled with evidences that leadership by force cannot endure. The downfall of a disappearance of dictators and the kings is significant. It means that people will not follow forced leadership indefinitely. The world had just entered a new era of relationship between leaders and followers, which very clearly calls for new leaders and a new brand of leadership in a business and industry. Those who belong to the old school of leadership by force must acquire an understanding of the new brand of leadership, cooperation, or be delegated to the rank and file of followers. There is no other way out for them. The relationship of employer and employee or leader and follower in the future will be one of mutual cooperation based upon an equitable division of the profits of a business. In the future, the relationship of employer and employee will be more like a partnership than it has been in the past. Napoleon, Kaiser William of Germany, the Czar of Russia, and the King of Spain were examples of leadership by force. Their leadership passed without much difficulty. One might point to the prototypes of these ex-leaders among the business, financial and labor leaders of America who have been dethroned or slated to go. Leadership by consent of the followers is the only brand which can endure. Men may follow the forced leadership temporarily, but they will not do so willingly. The new brand of leadership will embrace the 11 factors of leadership described in this chapter, as well as some other factors. The man who makes these the basis of his leadership will find abundant opportunity to lead in any walk of life. The depression was prolonged largely because the world lacked leadership of the new brand. At the end of the depression, the demand for leaders who are competent to apply the new methods of leadership has greatly exceeded the supply. Some of the old type of leaders will reform and adapt themselves to the new brand of leadership, but generally speaking, the world will have to look for new timber for its leadership. This necessity may be your opportunity. The 10 major causes of failure in a leadership. We come now to the major faults of leaders who fail, because it is just as essential to know what not to do as it is to know what to do. As rightly said by Steve Jobs, what he said, it is much important what not to do at my premises than what how to or we how to do at our premises. Let us get ahead. First one, inability to organize detail. Efficient leadership calls for ability to organize and master details. No genuine leader is ever too busy to do anything which may be required of him in his capacity as leader. When a man, whether he is a leader or follower, admits that he is too busy to change his plans or to give attention to an emergency, he admits his inefficiency. The successful leader must be the master of all details connected with his position. That means, of course, that he must acquire the habit of relegating details of capable lieutenants. Second, unwillingness to render humble service. Truly great leaders are willing, when occasion demands, to perform any sort of labor which they would ask another to perform. The greatest among ye shall be the servant of all, is a truth which all able leaders observe and respect. Third, expectations of pay for what they know instead of what they do with that which they know. The world does not pay men for that which they know. It pays them for what they do or induce others to do. Fourth one, fear of competition from followers. The leaders who fears that one of his followers may take his position is practically sure to realize that fear sooner or later. The able leader trains understudies to whom he may delegate at will any of the details of his position. Only in this way may a leader multiply himself and prepare himself to be at many places and give attention to many things at one time. It is an eternal truth that men receive more pay of their ability to get others to perform than they could possibly earn by their own efforts. An efficient leader may, through his knowledge of his job and the magnetism of his personality, greatly increase the efficiency of others and induce them to render more service and better service than they could render without his aid. Fifth, lack of imagination. Without imagination, the leader is incapable of meeting emergency and of creating plans by which to guide his followers efficiently. Sixth, selfishness. The leader who claims all the honor for the work of his followers is sure to be met by resentment. The really great leader claims none of the honors. He is contented to see the honors, when there are any, go to his followers, because he knows that most men will work harder for the commendation and recognition than they will for money alone. 7. Intemperance. Followers do not respect an intemperate leader. Moreover, intemperance in any of its various forms destroys the endurance and the vitality of all who indulge in it. 8. Disloyalty. Perhaps this should have come at the head of the list. The leader who is not loyal to his trust and to his associates, those above him and those below him, cannot long maintain his leadership. Disloyalty marks one as being less than the dust of the earth and brings down on one's head and contempt he deserves. Lack of loyalty is one of the major causes of failure in every walk of life. Ninth one, emphasis of the authority of leadership. The efficient leader leads by encouraging and not by trying to instill fear in the hearts of his followers. The leader who tries to impress his followers with his authority comes within the category of leadership through force. If a leader is a real leader, he will have no need to advertise that fact except by his conduct. His sympathy, understanding, fairness, and demonstration that he knows his job. 10th, emphasis of the title. The competent leader requires no title to give him the respect of his followers. The man who makes too much over his title generally has little else to emphasize. The doors to the office of the real leader are open to all who wish to enter, and his working quarters are free from formality or ostentation. These are among the more common of the causes of failure in leadership. Any one of these faults is sufficient to induce failure. Study the list carefully if you aspire to leadership, and make sure that you are free of these faults. Some fertile fields in which new leadership will be required. Before leaving this chapter, your attention is called to a few of the fertile fields in which there has been a decline of leadership and in which the new type of leader may find an abundance of opportunity. First, in the field of politics, there is a most insistent demand for new leaders, a demand which indicates nothing less than an emergency. The majority of politicians have seemingly become high-grade, legalized racketeers. They have increased taxes and debauched the machinery of industry and business until the people can no longer stand the burden. Second, the banking business is undergoing a reform. The leaders in this field have almost entirely lost the confidence of the public. Already, the bankers have sensed the need of reform and they have begun it. Third, industry calls for new leaders. The old type of leaders thought and moved in terms of dividends instead of thinking and moving in terms of human equation. The future leader in industry to endure must regard himself as a quasi-public official whose duty it is to manage his trust in such a way that it will work hardship on no individual or group of individuals. Exploitation of working men is a thing of the past. Let the man who aspires to leadership in the field of business, industry, and labor remember this. Fourth, the religious leader of the future will be forced to give more attention to the temporal needs of his followers in the solution of their economic and personal problems of the present and less attention to the dead past and the yet unborn future. Fifth, in the profession of law, medicine, and education, a new brand of leadership and to some extent new leaders will become a necessity. This is especially true in the field of education. The leader in that field must in the future find ways and means of teaching people how to apply the knowledge they receive in school. He must deal more with the practice and less with the theory. Sixth, new leaders will be required in the field of journalism. Newspapers of the future to be conducted successfully must be divorced from special privilege and relieved from the subsidy of advertising. They must cease to be organ of the propaganda of the interest which patronize their advertising columns. The type of newspaper which publishes scandal and lewd pictures will eventually go the way of all forces which devote the human mind. These are but a few of the fields in which opportunity for new leaders and a new brand of leadership are now available. The world is undergoing a rapid change. This means that the media through which the changes in human habit are promoted must be adapted to the changes. The media here described are the ones which more than any others determine the trend of civilization. When and how to apply for a position. The information described here is the net result of many years of experience during which thousands of men and women were helped to market their services effectively. It can therefore be relied upon as sound and practical. Media through which services may be marketed. Experience has proved that the following media offer the most direct and effective methods of bringing the buyer and seller of personal services together. First, employment bureaus. Care must be taken to select only reputable bureaus and management of which can show adequate records of achievement of satisfactory results. There are comparatively few such bureaus. Second, advertising in newspapers, trade journals, magazines, and radio. Classified advertising may usually be relied upon to produce satisfactory results in the case of those who apply for clerical or ordinary salaried positions. Display advertising is more desirable in case of those who seek executive connections. The copy to appear in the section of the paper which is most apt to come to the attention of the class of employer being sought. The copy should be prepared by an expert who understands how to inject sufficient selling qualities to produce replies. Third, personal letters of application. Personal letters of application directed to particular firms or individuals most apt to need such services as are being offered. Letters should be neatly typed always and signed by hand. With the letter should be sent a complete brief or outline of the applicant's qualifications. Both the letter of application and the brief of experience or qualifications should be prepared by an expert. See instructions as to information to be supplied. Fourth, application through personal acquaintances. When possible, the applicant should endeavor to approach prospective employers through some mutual acquaintance. This method of approach is particularly advantageous in the case of those who seek executive connections and do not wish to appear to be peddling themselves. Fifth, application in person. In some instances, it may be more effective if the applicant offers personally his services to prospective employers, in which event a complete written statement of qualifications for the position should be presented, for the reason that prospective employer often wish to discuss with associates one's record. Information to be supplied in a written brief. This brief should be prepared as carefully as a lawyer would prepare the brief of a case to be tried in court. Unless the applicant is experienced in the preparation of such briefs, an expert should be consulted and his services enlisted for this purpose. Successful merchants employ men and women who understand the art and the psychology of advertising to present the merits of their merchandise. One who has personal services for sale should do the same. The following information should appear in the brief. First, education, state briefly but definitely what schooling you have had and in what subjects you specialized in school, giving the reasons for that specialization. Second, experience. If you have had experience in connection with a position similar to the one you seek, describe it fully. State names and addresses of former employers. Be sure to bring out clearly very special experience you may have had which would equip you to fill the position you seek. Third, references. Practically every business firm describes to know all about the previous records and antecedents, etc. of prospective employees who seek positions of responsibility. Attach to your brief photostatic copies of letters from former employers, teachers under whom you studied. Third, prominent people whose judgment may be relied upon. Fourth, photograph of self. Attach to your brief a recent unmounted photograph of yourself. Fifth, apply for a specific position. Avoid application for a position without describing exactly what particular position you seek. Never apply for just a position that indicates you lack specialized qualifications. Sixth, State your qualification for the particular position for which you apply. Give full details as to the reason you believe you are qualified for a particular position you seek. This is the application. It will determine more than anything else what consideration you receive. 7. Offer to go to work on probation. In the majority of instances, if you are determined to have the position for which you apply, it will be most effective if you offer to work for a week or a month or for a sufficient length of time to enable your prospective employer to judge your value without pay. This may appear to be a radical suggestion, but experience has proved that it seldom fails to win at least a trial. If you are sure of your qualifications, a trial is all you need. Incidentally, such an offer indicates that you have confidence in your ability to fill the position you seek. It is most convincing. If your offer is accepted and you make good, more than likely you will be paid for your probation period. Make clear the fact that your offer is based upon your confidence in your ability to fill the position, your confidence in your prospective employer's decision to employ you after trial, your determination to have the position you seek. 8th one, knowledge of your prospective employer's business. Before applying for a position, do sufficient research in connection with the business to familiarize yourself thoroughly with that business and indicate in your brief the knowledge you have acquired in this field. This will be impressive as it will indicate that you have imagination and a real interest in the position you seek. Remember that it is not the lawyer who knows the most law, but the one who best prepares his case who wins. If your case is properly prepared and presented, your victory will have been more than half won at the outset. Do not be afraid of making your brief too long. Employers are just as much interested in purchasing the services of well-qualified applicants as you are in securing employment. In fact, the success of most successful employers is due in the main to their ability to select well-qualified lieutenants. They want all the information available. Remember another thing. Neatness in the preparation of your brief will indicate that you are a painstaking person. I have helped to prepare briefs for the clients which were so striking and out of the ordinary that they resulted in the employment of the applicant without a personal interview. When your brief has been completed, have it neatly bound by an experienced binder and lettered by an artist or printer similar to the following. Brief of the qualifications of Robert K. Smith applying for the position of private secretary to the president of the blank company Inc. Change names each time a brief is shown. This personal touch is sure to command attention. How your brief neatly typed and mimeographed on the finest paper you can obtain and bound it with a heavy paper of the book cover variety, the binder to be changed and the proper firm name to be inserted if it is to be shown to more than one company. Your photograph should be pasted on one of the pages of your brief. Follow these instructions to the letter, improving upon them wherever your imagination suggests. Successful salesmen groom themselves with care. They understand that first impressions are lasting. Your brief is your salesman. Give it a good suit of clothes so it will stand out in bold contrast to anything your prospective employer ever saw in the way of an application for a position. If the position you seek is worth having, it is worth going after with care. Moreover, if you sell yourself to an employer in a manner that impresses him with your individuality, you probably will receive more money for your services from the very start than you would if you applied for employment in the usual conventional way. If you seek employment through an advertising agency or an employment agency, how the agent use copies of your brief in marketing your services. This will help to gain a preference for you both with the agent and the prospective employers. How to get the exactly position you desire. Everyone enjoys doing the kind of work for which he is best suited. An artist loves to work with pens, a craftsman with his hands, a writer loves to write. Those with less definite talents have their preferences for certain fields of business and industry. If America does anything well, it offers a full range of occupations tiling the soil, manufacturing, marketing, and professions. First, decide exactly what kind of a job you want. If the job doesn't already exist, perhaps you can create it. Second, choose the company or individual for whom you wish to work. Third, study your prospective employer as to policies, personnel, and chances of advancement. Fourth, by analysis of yourself, your talents and capabilities, figure what you can offer and plan ways and means of giving advantages, services, developments, ideas that you believe you can successfully deliver. Fifth, forget about a job, forget whether or not there is an opening. Forget the usual routine of how you got a job for me. Concentrate on what you can give. Sixth, once you have your plan in mind, arrange with an experienced writer to put it on paper in a neat form and in full detail. 7. Present it to the proper person with authority and he will do the rest. Every company is looking for a man who can give something of value, whether it be ideas, services, or connections. Every company has room for the man who has a definite plan of action which is to the advantage of that company. This line of procedure may take a few days or weeks of extra time, but the difference in income, in advancement, and in gaining recognition will save years of hard work at small pay. It has many advantages, the main one being that it will often save from 1 to 5 years of time in reaching a chosen goal. Every person who starts or gets in halfway up the ladder does so by deliberate and careful planning, expecting, of course, the boss son. The new way of marketing services jobs are now partnerships. Men and women who market their services to best advantage in the future must recognize the stupendous change which has taken place in connection with the relationship between employer and employee. In the future, the golden rule and not the rule of gold will be the dominating factor in the marketing of merchandise as well as personal services. The future relationship between employer and their employees will be more in the nature of a partnership consisting of the employer, the employee, and the public they serve. This new way of marketing personal services is called new for many reasons. First, both the employer and the employee of the future will be considered as fellow employees whose business it will be to serve the public efficiently. In times past, employers and employees have bartered among themselves, driving the best bargains they could with one another, not considering that in the final analysis they were in reality bargaining at the expense of the third party, the public they serve. The Depression served as a mighty protest from an injured public whose rights had been trampled upon in every direction by those who were clamoring for individual advantages and profits. When the debris of the Depression shall have been cleared away and businesses shall have been once again restored to balance, both employers and employees will recognize that they are no longer privileged to drive bargains at the expense of those whom they serve. The real employer of the future will be the public, This should be kept uttermost in mind by every person seeking to market personal services effectively. Nearly every railroad in America is in financial difficulty. Who does not remember the day when if a citizen inquired at the ticket office the time of departure of a train, he was abruptly referred to the bulletin board instead of being politely given the information. The streetcar companies have experienced a change of times also. There was a time not so very long ago when streetcar conductors took pride in giving argument to passengers. Many of the streetcar tracks have been removed and passengers ride on a bus whose driver is the last word in politeness. All over the country, streets car tracks are rusting from abandonment or have been taken up. Wherever street cars are still in operation, passengers may now ride without argument, and one may even hail the car in the middle of the block and the motorman will obligatory pick him up. How times have changed, that is just the point I am trying to emphasize. Times have changed. Moreover, the change is reflected not merely in a railroad offices and on street cars, but in other walks of life as well. The public be damned policy is now peace. It has been supplanted by the we are obligatory at your service sir policy. The bankers have learned a thing or two during this rapid change which has taken place during the past few years. Impoliteness on the part of a bank official or bank employee today is as rare as it was conspicuous a dozen years ago. In the years past, some bankers, not all of them of course, carried an atmosphere of austerity which gave every would-be borrower a chill when the even thought of approaching his banker for a loan. The thousands of bank failures during the Depression had the effect of removing the mahogany doors behind which bankers firmly barricaded themselves. They now sit at desks in the open where they may be seen and approached at will by any depositor or by anyone who wishes to see them, and the whole atmosphere of the bank is one of courtesy and understanding. It is used to be customary for customers to have to stand and wait at the corner grocery until the clerks were through passing the time of the day with friends and the proprietor had finished making up his bank deposits before being waited upon. Chain stores managed to courteous men who do everything in the way of service short of shining the customer's shoe have pushed the old time merchants into the background. The time marches on. Courtesy and services are the watchwords of merchandising today and apply to the person who is marketing personal services even more directly than to the employer whom he serves, because in the final analysis both the employer and his employees are employed by the public they serve. If they fail to serve well, they pay by the loss of their privilege of serving. We can all remember the time when the gas meter reader pounded on the door hard enough to break the panels. When the door was opened, he pushed his way in uninvited with a scowl on his face which plainly said, "What the hell did you keep me waiting for?" All that has undergone a change. The meterman now conducts himself as a gentleman who is delighted to be at your service, sir. Before the gas companies learned that their scowling metermen were accumulating liabilities never to be cleared away, the polite salesman of oil burners came along and did a land of his business. During the Depression, I spent several months in the arthritis coal region of Pennsylvania studying conditions which all but destroyed the coal industry. Among several very significant discoveries was the fact that greed on the part of operators and their employees was the chief cause of the loss of business for the operators and loss of jobs for miners. Through the pressure of groups of overzealous labor leaders representing the employees and the greed for profits on the part of the operators, the authorities' business suddenly dwindled. The coal operators and their employees drew sharp bargains with one another, adding the cost of the bargaining to the price of the coal until finally they discovered they had built up a wonderful business for the manufacturers of oil burning outfits and the producers of crude oil. The wages of sin is death. Many have read this in the Bible, but few have discovered its meaning. Now and for several years, the entire world has been listening by force to a sermon which might well be called "Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall be also reap." Nothing as widespread and effective as the depression could possibly be a just coincidence. Behind the depression was a cause. Nothing ever happens without a cause. In the men, the cause of depression is traceable directly to the worldwide habit of trying to reap without sowing. This should not be mistaken to mean that the depression represents a crop which the world is being forced to reap without having sown. The trouble is that the world sowed the wrong sort of seed. Any farmer knows he cannot sow the seed of thistle and reap a harvest of grain. Beginning at the outbreak of the World War, the people of the world began to sow the seed of service inadequate in both quality and quantity. Nearly everyone was engaged in the pastime of trying to get without giving. These illustrations are brought to the attention to those who have personal services to market to show that we are where we are and what we are because of our own conduct. If there is a principle of cause and effect which controls business, finances and transportation, this same principle controls individuals and determines their economic status. What is your QQS rating? The causes of success in marketing services effectively and permanently have been clearly described. Unless those causes are studied, analyzed, understood and applied, no man can market his services effectively and permanently. Every person must be his own salesman of personal services. The quality and the quantity of service rendered and the spirit in which it is rendered determine to a large extent the price and the duration of employment. To market personal services effectively, which means a permanent market at a satisfactory price under pleasant conditions, one must adopt the proper spirit of cooperation. One must adopt and follow the QQS formula, which means that quality plus quantity plus the proper spirit of cooperation equals the perfect salesmanship of a service. I need to repeat this. One must adopt and follow the QQS formula, which means Q stands for quality, second Q stands for quantity, and third S stands for proper spirit of cooperation equals perfect salesmanship of a service. Remember the QQS formula, but do more apply it as a habit. Let us analyze the formula to make sure we understand exactly what it means. First, quality of a service shall be constructed to mean the performance of every detail in connection with your position in the most efficient manner possible, with the object of greater efficiency always in mind. Second, quantity of service shall be understood to mean the habit of rendering all the services of which you are capable at all times, with the purpose of increasing the amount of service rendered as greater skill is developed through practice and experience. Emphasis is again placed on the word habit. Third, spirit of service shall be constructed to mean the habit of agreeable, harmonious conduct which will induce cooperation from associates and fellow employees. Adequacy of quality and quantity of service is not sufficient to maintain a permanent market for your services. The conduct or the spirit in which you deliver service is a strong determining factor in connection with both the price you receive and the duration of employment. Andrew Carnegie stressed this point more than others in connection with his description of the factors which lead to success in the marketing of personal services. He emphasized again and again the necessity for harmonious conduct. He stressed the fact that he would not retain any man no matter how great a quantity or how efficient the quality of his work, unless he worked in a spirit of harmony. Mr. Carnegie insisted upon men being agreeable. To prove that he placed a high value upon this quality, he permitted many men who conformed to his standards to become very wealthy. Those who did not conform had to make room for others. The importance of a pleasing personality has been stressed because it is a factor which enables one to render service in the proper spirit. If one has a personality which pleases and renders services in a spirit of harmony, these assets often make up for deficiencies in both the quality and the quantity of service one renders. Nothing, however, can be successfully substituted for pleasing conduct. The capital value of your services. The person whose income is derived entirely from the sale of personal services is no less a merchant than the man who sells commodities, and it might well be added such a person is subject to exactly the same rules of conduct as the merchant who sells merchandise. This has been emphasized because the majority of people who live by the sale of personal services make the mistake of considering themselves free from the rules of conduct and the responsibilities attached to those who are engaged in marketing commodities. The new way of marketing services has practically forced both employer and employee into partnership alliance through which both take into consideration the rights of third party, the public they serve. The day of the go-getter has passed. He has been supplanted by the go-giver. High pressure methods in business finally blew the lead off. There will never be the need to put the lead back on, because in future businesses will be conducted by methods that will require no pressure. The actual capital value of your brains may be determined by the amount of income you can produce by marketing your services. A fair estimate of the capital value of your services may be made by multiplying your annual income by 16 or 2/3, as it is reasonable to estimate that your annual income represents 6% of your capital value. Money rents for 6% per annum. Money is worth no more than brains. It is often worth much less. Competent brains, if effectively marketed, represent a much more desirable form of capital than that which is required to conduct a business dealing in commodities, because brains are a form of capital which cannot be permanently depreciated through depreciations, nor can this form of capital be stolen or spent. Moreover, the money which is essential for the conduct of business is worth less as a sand dune until it has been mixed with efficient brains. The 30 major causes of failure. How many of these are holding you back? Life's greatest tragedy consists of men and women who earnestly try and fail. The tragedy lies in the overwhelmingly large majority of people who fail as compared to the few who succeed. I have had the privilege of analyzing several thousands of men and women, 98% of whom were classed as a failure. There is something radically wrong with a civilization and a system of education which permit 98% of people to go through life as failures. But I did not write this book for purpose of moralizing on the rights and wrongs of the world. That would require a book 100 times the size of this one. My analysis work proved that there are 30 major reasons for failure, or 13 major principles through which people accumulate fortunes. In this chapter, a description of the 30 major causes of failure will be given. As you go over the list, check yourself by it point by point for the purpose of discovering how many of these causes of failure stand between you and success. First, unfavorable hereditary background. Unfavorable hereditary background. There is but little, if anything, which can be done for people who are born with a deficiency in brain power. This philosophy offers but one method of bridging this weakness through the aid of the mastermind. Observe with profit, however, that this is only one of the 30 causes of failure which may not be easily corrected by any individual. Second, lack of a well-defined purpose in life. There is no hope of success for the person who does not have a central purpose or a definite goal at which to aim. 98 out of every 100 of those whom I have analyzed have no such aim. Perhaps this was the third, lack of ambition to aim above mediocrity. Third, lack of ambition to aim above mediocrity. We offer no hope for the person who is so indifferent as not to want to get ahead in life and who is not willing to pay the price. Fourth one, insufficient education. This is a handicap which may be overcome with a comparative ease. Experience has proven that the best educated people are often those who are known as self-made or self-educated. It takes more than a college degree to make a person of education. Any person who is educated is one who has learned to get whatever he wants in his life without violating the rights of others. Education consists not so much of knowledge but of knowledge effectively and persistently applied. Men are paid not merely for what they know but more particularly for what they do with that which they know. Fifth one, lack of self-discipline. Discipline comes through self-control. This means that one must control all negative qualities. Before you can control conditions, you must first control yourself. Self-mastery is the hardest job you will ever tackle. If you do not conquer self, you will be conquered by self. You may see at one and the same time both your best friend and your greatest enemy by stepping in front of a mirror. Sixth, ill health. No person may enjoy outstanding success without good health. Many of the causes of ill health are subject to mastery and control. These in the main are: first, overeating of foods not conducive to health. Second, wrong habits of thought giving expression to negatives. Third, wrong use of and overindulgence in sex. Fourth, lack of proper physical exercise. Then fifth, an inadequate supply of fresh air due to improper breathing. Let us go ahead with the seventh cause of failure: unfavorable environmental influences during childhood. As the twig is bent, so shall the tree grow. Most people who have criminal tendencies acquire them as the result of bad environment and improper associates during childhood. 8. Procrastination. This is one of the most common causes of failure. Old man procrastination stands within the shadow of every human being, waiting his opportunity to spoil one's chances of success. Most of us go through life as failures because we are waiting for the time to be right to start doing something worthwhile. Do not wait, the time will never be just right. Start where you stand and work with whatever tools you may have at your command, and better tools will be found as you go along. 9th, lack of persistence. Most of us are good starters but poor finishers of everything we begin. Moreover, people are prone to give up at the first signs of defeat. There is no substitute for persistence. The person who makes persistence his watchword discovers that old man failure finally becomes tired and makes his departure. Failure cannot cope with persistence. Let us get ahead with the 10th factor in failure, negative personality. There is no hope of success for the person who repels people through a negative personality. Success comes through the application of power, and power is attained through the cooperative efforts of other people. A negative personality will not induce cooperation. 11th one, lack of controlled sexual urge. Sex energy is the most powerful of all the stimuli which move people into action. Because it is the most powerful of the emotion, it must be controlled through transmutation and converted into other channels. 12th one, uncontrolled desire for something for nothing. The gambling instinct drives millions of people to failure. Evidence of this may be found in a study of the Wall Street crash of 29, during which millions of people tried to make money by gambling on stock margins. 13. Lack of a well-defined power of decision. Men who succeed reach decisions promptly and change them, if at all, very slowly. Men who fail reach decisions, if at all, very slowly and change them frequently and quickly. Indecision and procrastination are twin brothers. Where one is found, the other may usually be found also. Kill off this pair before they completely hogtie you to the treadmill of failure. Let us get ahead with 14th failure cause one or more of the 6 basic fears. These fears have been analyzed for you in a later chapter. They must be mastered before you can market your services effectively. 15. Wrong selection of a mate in a marriage. This is a most common cause of failure. The relationship of marriage brings people intimately into contact. Unless this relationship is harmonious, failure is likely to follow. Moreover, it will be a form of failure that is marked by misery and unhappiness, destroying all signs of ambition. 16. Overcaution. The person who takes no chances generally has to take whatever is left when others are through choosing. Overcaution is as bad as undercaution. Both are extremes to be guarded against. Life itself is filled with the element of chance. 17th cause of failure, wrong selection of associates in a business. This is one of the most common cause of failures in business. In a marketing personal services, one should use great care to select an employer who will be an inspiration and who is himself intelligent and successful. We emulate those with whom we associate most closely. Pick an employer who is worth emulating. 18th cause of failure, superstition and prejudice. Superstition is a form of fear. It is also a sign of ignorance. Men who succeed keep open minds and are afraid of nothing. 19th cause of failure, wrong selection of a vocation. No man can succeed in a line of endeavor which he does not like. The most essential step in the marketing of personal services is that of selecting an occupation into which you can throw yourself wholeheartedly. 20th cause, lack of concentration of effort. The jack of all trades seldom is good at any. Concentrate all of your efforts on one definite cheap aim. 21st cause of failure, the habit of indiscriminate spending. The spendthrift cannot succeed mainly because he spends eternally in fear of poverty. Form the habit of systematic saving by putting aside a definite percentage of your income. Money in the bank gives one a very safe foundation of courage when bargaining for a sale of personal services. Without money, one must take what one is offered and be glad to get it. 22nd cause of failure, lack of enthusiasm. Without enthusiasm, one cannot be convincing. Moreover, enthusiasm is contagious and the person who has it under control, it is generally welcome in any group of people. 23rd cause, intolerance. The person with a closed mind on any subject seldom gets ahead. Intolerance means that one has stopped acquiring knowledge. The most damaging forms of intolerance are those connected with religious, racial, and political differences of opinion. 24th cause of failure, intemperance. The most damaging forms of intemperance are connected with eating, strong drink, and sexual activities. Overindulgence in any of these is fatal to success. 25th cause of failure, inability to cooperate with others. More people lose their position and their big opportunities in life because of this fault than for all other reasons combined. It is a fault which no well-informed businessman or leader will tolerate. 26th cause, possession of power that was not acquired through self-effort. Sons and daughters of wealthy men and others who inherit money which they did not earn. Power in the hands of one who did not acquire it gradually is often fatal to success. Quick riches are more dangerous than poverty. 27th cause of failure, intentional dishonesty. There is no substitute for honesty. One may be temporarily dishonest by force of circumstances over which one has no control without permanent damage. But there is no hope for the person who is dishonest by choice. Sooner or later, his deeds will catch up with him and he will pay by loss of reputation and perhaps even loss of liberty. 28th cause of failure, egotism and vanity. These qualities serve as red lights which warn others to keep away. They are fatal to success. 29. Guessing instead of thinking. Most people are too indifferent or lazy to acquire facts with which to think accurately. They prefer to act on opinions created by guesswork or snap judgments. 30th, lack of capital. This is a common cause of failure among those who start out in a business for the first time without sufficient reserve of capital to absorb the shock of their mistakes and to carry them over until they have established a reputation. And last, 31st cause of failure. Under this name, any particular cause of failure from which you have suffered that has not been included in the foregoing list. I will repeat all 30 causes of failure once again. First, unfavorable hereditary background. Unfavorable hereditary background, lack of a well-defined purpose in life, lack of ambition to aim above mediocrity, insufficient education, lack of self-discipline, ill health, unfavorable environmental influences during childhood, procrastination, lack of persistence, negative personality, lack of controlled sexual urge, uncontrolled desire for something for nothing, lack of a well-defined power of decision, one or more of the 6 basic fears, wrong selection of a mate in a marriage, overcaution, wrong selection of associates in business, superstition and prejudice, wrong selection of a vocation, lack of concentration of effort, the habit of indiscriminate spending, lack of enthusiasm, intolerance, intemperance, inability to cooperate with others, possession of power that was not acquired through self-effort, intentional dishonesty, egotism and vanity, guessing instead of thinking, lack of capital. And under this last one, under this, name any particular cause of failure from which you have suffered that has not been included in the foregoing list. In these 30 major causes of failure is found a description of the tragedy of life which obtains for practically every person who tries and fails. It will be helpful if you can induce someone who knows you will you well to go over this list with you and help to analyze you by the 30 causes of failure. It may be beneficial if you try this alone. Most people cannot see themselves as others see them. You may be one who cannot. The oldest of admonitions is man who themselves. If you market merchandise successfully, you must know the merchandise. The same is true in the marketing personal services. You should know all of your weaknesses in order that you may either bridge them or eliminate them entirely. You should know your strength in order that you may call attention to it when selling your services. You can know yourself only through accurate analysis. The folly of ignorance in connection with self was displayed by a young man who applied to a manager of a well-known business for a position. He made a very good impression until the manager asked him what salary he expected. He replied that he had no fixed sum in mind, lack of a definite aim. The manager then said, "We will pay you all you are worth. Alter we try you out for a week." "I will not accept it," the applicant replied, "because I am getting more than that where I am now employed." Before you even start to negotiate for a readjustment of your salary in your present position or to seek employment elsewhere, be sure that you are worth more than you now receive. It is one thing in want money, everyone wants more, but it is something entirely different to be worth more. Many people mistake their wants for their just dues. Your financial requirements or wants have nothing whatever to do with your worth. Your value is established entirely by your ability to render useful service or your capacity to induce others to render such service. Take inventory of yourself 28 questions you should answer. Annual self-analysis is an essential in the effective marketing of personal services as is annual inventory in merchandising. Moreover, the yearly analysis should disclose a decrease in faults and an increase in virtues. One goes ahead and stands still or goes backward in life. One's object should be, of course, to go ahead. Annual self-analysis will disclose whether the advancement has been made or if so, how much. It will also disclose any backward step one may have made. The effective marketing of personal services requires one to move forward even if the progress is slow. Your annual self-analysis should be made at the end of each year so you can include in your New Year's resolution any improvements which the analysis indicates should be made. Take this inventory by asking yourself the following questions and checking your answers with the aid of someone who will not permit you to deceive yourself as to their accuracy. Self-analysis questions for personal inventory. First, have I attained the goal which I established as my objective for this year? You should work with a definite yearly objective to be attained as a part of your major life objective. Second, have I delivered service of the best possible quality of which I was capable, or could I have improved any part of this service? Third, have I delivered service in the greatest possible quality of which I was capable? Fourth, has the spirit of my conduct been harmonious and cooperative at all times? Fifth, have I permitted the habit of procrastination to decrease my efficiency, and if so, to what extent? Sixth, have I improved my personality, and if so, in what ways? Seventh, have I been persistent in following my plans to completion? Eighth, have I reached a decision promptly and definitely on all occasions? Ninth, have I permitted any one or more of 6 basic fears to decrease my efficiency? 10th, have I been either overcautious or undercautious? 11th, has my relationship with my associate in work been pleasant or unpleasant? If it has been unpleasant, has the fault been partly or wholly mine? 12th, Have I dissipated any of my energy through lack of concentration of effort? 13. Have I been open-minded and tolerant in connection with all subjects? 14. In what way have I improved my ability to render services? 15. Have I been intemperate in any of my habits? 16th, have I expressed either openly or secretly any form of egotism? 17th, has my conduct toward my associates been such that it has induced them to respect me? 18th one, have my opinion and decisions been based upon guesswork or accuracy of analysis and thought? 19th one, have I followed the habit of budgeting my time, my expenses and my income, and have I been conservative in these budgets? 20th one, how much time have I devoted to unprofitable effort which I might have used to better advantage? 21st, how may I rebudget my time and change my habits so I will be more efficient during the coming year? 22nd, have I been guilty of any conduct which was not approved by my conscience? 23rd, in what ways have I rendered more service and better service than I was paid to render? 24th, have I been unfair to anyone, and if so, in what ways? 25th, if I had been the purchaser of my own services for the year, would I be satisfied with my purchase? 26th one, am I in the right vocation, and if not, why not? 27, has the purchaser of my services been satisfied with the service I have rendered, and if not, why not? 28th one, what is my present rating on the fundamental principles of success? Make this rating fairly and frankly and have it checked by someone who is courageous enough to do it accurately. Let us go ahead once again through these 28 questions to have the self-analysis for personal inventory. Have I attained the goal which I established as my objective of this year? Have I delivered services of the best possible quality of which I was capable, or could I have improved any part of this service? Have I delivered service in the greatest possible quality of which I was capable? Has the spirit of my conduct been harmonious and cooperative at all times? Have I permitted the habit of procrastination to decrease my efficiency, and if so, to what extent? Have I improved my personality, and if so, in what ways? Have I been persistent in following my plans through the completion? Have I reached the decision promptly and definitely on all occasions? Have I permitted any one or more of 6 basic fears to decrease my efficiency? Have I been either overcautious or undercautious? How has my relationship with my associates in work been pleasant or unpleasant? If it has been unpleasant, has the fault been partially or wholly mine? Have I dissipated any of my energy through lack of concentration of effort? Have I been open-minded and tolerant in connection with all subjects? In what ways have I improved my ability to render services? Have I been intemperate in any of my habits? Have I expressed either openly or secretly any form of egotism? Has my conduct towards my association been such that it has induced them to respect me? Have my opinion and decisions been based upon guesswork or accuracy of analysis and thought? Have I followed the habit of budgeting my time, my expenses and my income, and have I been conservative in these budgets? How much time I have devoted to unprofitable effort which I might have used to better advantage? How may I rebudget my time and change my habits so I will be more efficient during this coming year? Have I been guilty of any conduct which was not approved by my conscience? In what ways have I rendered more services and better service? In what ways have I rendered more services and better services than I was paid to render? Have I been unfair to anyone, and if so, in what ways? If I had been the purchaser of my own services for the year, would I be satisfied with my purchase? Am I in the right vocation, and if not, why not? Has the purchaser of my services been satisfied with the service I have rendered, and if not, why not? And finally, what is my present rating on the fundamental principles of success? Make this rating fairly and frankly, and have it checked by someone who is courageous enough to do it accurately. Having read and assimilated the information conveyed through this chapter, you are now ready to create a practical plan for marketing your personal services. In this chapter will be found an adequate description of every principle essential planning the sale of personal services, including the major attributes of leadership and the most common causes of failure in a leadership, a description of the field of opportunity for leadership, the main cause of failure in all walks of life, and the important questions which should be used in self-analysis. This extensive and detailed presentation of accurate information has been included because it will be needed by all who must begin the accumulation of riches by marketing personal services. Those who have lost their fortunes and those who are just beginning to earn money have nothing but personal services to offer in return for riches. Therefore, it is essential that they have available the practical information needed to market services to best knowledge. The information contained in this chapter will be of great value to all who aspire to attain leadership in any calling. It will be particularly helpful to those aiming to market their services as business or industrial executives. Complete assimilation and understanding of the information here conveyed will be helpful in marketing one's own services, and it will also help one to become more analytical and capable of judging people. The information will be priceless to personal directors, employment managers, and other executives charged with the selection of employees and the maintenance of efficient organizations. If you doubt this statement, test its soundness by answering in writing the 28 self-analysis questions. That might be both interesting and profitable even though you do not doubt the soundness of the statement. Where and how one may find opportunities to accumulate riches. Now that we have analyzed the principles by which the riches may be accumulated, we naturally ask, where may one find favorable opportunities to apply these principles? Very well, let us take inventory and see what the United States of America offer the person seeking riches, great or small. To begin with, let us remember, all of us, that we live in the country where every law-abiding citizen enjoys freedom of thought and freedom of deed unquestioned anywhere in the world. Most of us have never taken inventory of the advantages of this freedom. We have never compared our unlimited freedom with the correlated freedom in other countries. Here we have freedom of thought, freedom in the choice and enjoyment of education, freedom in religion, freedom in politics, freedom in the choice of business, profession or occupation, freedom to accumulate and own without molestation all. The property we can accumulate, freedom to choose our place of residence, freedom in marriage, freedom through equal opportunity to all races, freedom of travel from one state to another, freedom in our choices of foods and freedom to aim for any station in a life for which we have prepared ourselves, even for the presidency of the United States. We have other forms of freedom, but this list will give a bird's eye view of the most important, which constitutes opportunity of the highest order. This advantage of freedom is all the more conspicuous because the United States is the only country guaranteeing to every citizen, whether native born or naturalized, so broad and varied a list of freedom. Next, let us recount some of the blessings which our widespread freedom has placed within our hands. Take the average of American family, for example, meaning the family of average income, and some of the benefits available to every member of the family in this land of opportunity and plenty. First, food. Next to freedom of thought and the deed comes food, clothing and the shelter, and three basic necessities of life. Because of our universal freedom, the average American family has available at its very door the choicest selection of food to be found anywhere in the world and at prices within its financial ranges. The family of two living in the heart of Times Square district of New York City far removed from the source of production of foods, took careful inventory of the cost of a simple breakfast with these astonishing results. Article of food cost at breakfast table. Grapefruit juice from Florida 2, rippled white breakfast food 2, tea 2, bananas 2.5, toasted bread 1, fresh country eggs 7, sugar half, butter and cream 3, grand total 20. It is not very difficult to obtain food in a country where two people can have breakfast consisting of all they want or need for a dime apiece. Observe that this simple breakfast was gathered by some strange form of magic from China, South America, Utahs, Kansas and New England states and delivered on the breakfast table ready for consumption in the very heart of the most crowded city in America at a cost well within the means of the most humble laborer. The cost included all federal, state and city taxes. Here is a fact that the politicians did not mention when they were crying out to the voters to throw their opponents out of office because the people were being taxed to death. Second, shelter. This family lives in a comfortable apartment haunted by steam, lightened with electricity, with gas for cooking, all for $65 a month in a smaller city or a more spacious settled part of New York City. The same apartment could be had for as low as $20 a month. The toast they had for the breakfast in the food estimate was toasted on an electric toaster which cost but a few dollars. The apartment is cleaned with a vacuum sweeper that is run by electricity. Hot and cold water is available at all times in the kitchen and bathrooms. The food is kept cool in a refrigerator that is run by electricity. The wife curls her hair, washes her clothes and irons them with easily operated electrical equipments on a power operated by sticking a plug in the wall. The husband shaves with an electrical shaver and they receive entertainment from all over the world 24 hours a day if they want it without cost by merely turning the dial of their radio. There are other conveniences in this apartment, but the foregoing list will give a fair idea of some of the concrete evidences of the freedom we of America enjoy. And this is neither political nor economic propaganda. Third, clothing. Anywhere in the United States, the woman of average clothing requires can dress very comfortably and neatly for less than $200 a year, and the average man can dress for the same or less. Only the three basic necessities, food, clothing and shelter, have been mentioned. The average American citizen has other privileges and advantages available in return for the modest effort not exceeding 8 hours a day of labor. Among these is the privilege of automobile transportation with which one can go and come at will at a very small cost. The average American has a security of property rights not found in any of another country in the world. He can place his surplus money in a bank with the assurance that his government will protect it and make good to him if the bank fails. If an American citizen wants to travel from one state to another, he needs no passport, no one's permission. He may go when he pleases and returns at will. Moreover, he may travel by train, private automobile, bus, airplane or ship as his pocketbook permits. In Germany, Russia, Italy and most of the other European and Oriental countries, the people cannot travel with so much freedom and at so little cost. The miracle that has provided these blessings. We often hear politicians proclaiming the freedom of America when they solicit votes, but seldom do they take the time or devote sufficient effort to the analysis of the source or the nature of this freedom. Having an axe to grind, no grudges to expenses, no ulterior motives to be carried out, I have the privilege of going into a frank analysis of that mysterious, abstract, greatly misunderstood something which gives to every citizen of America more blessings, more opportunities to accumulate wealth, more freedom of every nature than may be found in any other country. I have the right to analyze the source and the nature of this unseen power because I know and have known Known for more than a quarter of a century, many of the men who organized that power and many who are now responsible for its maintenance. The name of this mysterious benefactor of mankind is capital. The capital consists not alone of money but more particularly of highly organized intelligent groups of men who plan ways and means of using money efficiently for a good of the public and profitably to themselves. These groups consist of scientists, educators, chemists, inventors, business analysts, publicity men, transportation experts, accountants, lawyers, doctors, and both men and women who have highly specialized knowledge in all fields of industry and business. They pioneer, experiment and blaze trails in a new field of endeavor. They support colleges, hospitals, public schools, build good roads, publish newspapers, pay most of the cost of government, and take care of the multitudinous detail essential to human progress. Stated briefly, the capitalists are the brains of civilization because they supply the entire fabric of which all education, enlightenment, and human progress consist. Money without brains always is dangerous. Properly used, it is the most important essential of a civilization. The simple breakfast here described could not have been delivered to the New York family at a dime each or at any other price if organized capital that not provided the machinery, the ships and the railroads and the huge armies of trained men to operate them. Some slight idea of the importance of organized capital may be had by trying to imagine yourself burdened with the responsibility of collecting without the aid of capital and delivering to the New York City family the simple breakfast described. To supply the tea, you would have to make a trip to China or India, both a very long way from America. Unless you are an excellent swimmer, you would become rather tired before making the round trip. Then another problem would confront you. What would you use for money even if you had the physical endurance to swim the ocean? To supply the sugar, you would have to take another long swim to Cuba or a long walk to the sugar beet section of Utah. But even then, you might come back without the sugar because organized effort and money are necessary to produce sugar, to say nothing of what is required to refine, transport and to deliver it to the breakfast table anywhere in the United States. The eggs you could deliver easily enough from the barns yards near New York City, but you would have a very long walk to Florida and return before you could serve the 2 eggs of grass fruit juice. You would have another long walk to Kansas or one of the other wheat growing states when you went after 4 slices of wheat bread. The rippled wheat biscuit would have to be omitted from the menu because they would not be available except through the labor of a trained organization of men, suitable machinery, all of which call for capital. While resting, you could take off for another little swim down to South America, where you would pick up a couple of bananas, and on a return you could take a short walk to the nearest farm having a dairy and pick up some butter and cream. Then your New York City family would be ready to sit down and enjoy breakfast, and you could collect your 2 dimes for your labor. Seems absurd, doesn't it? Well, the procedures described would be the only possible way these simple items of food could be delivered to the heart of New York City if we had no capitalistic system. The sum of money required for the building of maintenance of the railroads and the steamships used in the delivery of that simple breakfast is so huge that it staggers one's imagination. It runs into the hundreds of millions of dollars, not to mention the armies of trained employees required to man the ships and trains. But transportation is only a part of the requirement of modern civilization in capitalistic America. Before there can be anything to haul, something must be grown from the ground or manufactured and prepared for market. This calls for the more millions of dollars for equipment, machinery, boxing, marketing, and for the wages of millions of men and women. Steamships and railroads do not spring up from the earth and function automatically. They came in response to the call of civilization through the labor and ingenuity and organizing ability of men who have imagination, faith, enthusiasm, decision, persistence. These men are known as capitalists. They are motivated by the desire to build, construct, achieve, render useful services, earn profit and accumulate riches. And because they render services without which there would be no civilization, they put themselves in the way of great riches. Just to keep the record simple and understandable, I will add that these capitalists are the self-same men of whom most of us have heard soapbox orators speak. They are the same men to whom radicals, racketeers, denotes, politicians and grafting labor leaders refers as the predatory interest or Wall Streets. I am not attempting to present a brief for or against any group of men or any system of economics. I am not attempting to condemn collective bargaining when I refer to and grafting labor leaders, nor do I aim to give a clean bill of health to all individuals known as capitalists. The purpose of this book, a purpose to which I have faithfully devoted over a quarter of a century, is to present to all who want the knowledge the most dependable philosophy through which individuals may accumulate riches in the whatever amount they desire. I have here analyzed the economic advantage of the capitalistic system for the twofold purpose of showing, first one, that all who seek riches must recognize and adapt themselves to the system that controls all approaches to fortunes, large or small, and second one, to present the sides of the picture opposite to that being shown by the politicians and demagogues who deliberately becloud the issues they bring up by referring to organized capital as if it were something poisonous. This is a capitalistic country. It has developed through the use of capital, and we who claim the right to partake the blessings of freedom and opportunity, we who seek to accumulate riches here, may as well know that neither riches nor opportunity would be available to us if organized capital had not provided these benefits. For more than 20 years, it has been a somewhat popular and growing pastime of radicals, self-seeking politicians, racketeers, crooked labor leaders, and on occasion of religious leaders to take pot shots at Wall Street, the money changers and big businesses. The practice becomes so general that we witnessed during the business depression the unbelievable sight of high government officials lining up with the cheap politicians and labor leaders with the openly avowed purpose of throttling the system which has made industrial America the richest country on the earth. The lineup was so general and so well organized that it prolonged the worst depression America has ever known. It caused millions of men lose their jobs because those jobs were inseparably a part of the industrial and capitalistic system which formed the very backbone of the nation. During this unusual alliance of government officials and self-seeing individuals who were endeavoring to profit by declaring open season on the American system of industry, a certain type of labor leader joined forces with the politicians and offered to deliver voters in return the legislation designated to permit men to take riches away from industry by organized force of numbers instead of the better method of giving a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. Millions of men and women throughout the nation are still engaged in this popular pastime of trying to get without giving. Some of them are lined up with labor unions where they demand shorter hours and more pay. Others do not take the trouble to work at all. They demand government relief and are getting it. Their idea of their right of freedom was demonstrated in New York City, where violent complaints was registered with a postmaster by a group of relief beneficiaries because a postman awakened them at 7:30 a.m. to deliver government relief checks. They demanded that the time of delivery be set to 10 o'clock. If you are one of those who believes that riches can be accumulated by the mere act of men who organize themselves into groups and demand more pay for less service, if you are one of those who demand government relief without early morning disturbances when the money is delivered to you, if you are one of those who believe in trading their votes to politicians in return for the passing of laws which permits the raiding of reading of the public treasury, you may rest securely on your belief with a certain knowledge that no one will disturb you, because this is a free country where every man may think as he pleases, where nearly everybody can live with but little effort, where many may live well without doing any work whatsoever. However, you should know the full truth concerning this freedom of which so many people boast and so few understands, as great as it is, as far as it reaches as many privileges as it provides. It does not and cannot bring riches without effort. There is but one dependable method of accumulating and legally holding riches, and that is by rendering useful services. No system has ever been created and which men can legally acquire riches through mere forces of numbers or without giving in return an equivalent value of one form or another. There is a principle known as the law of economics. This is more than a theory, it is a law no man can beat. Mark well the name of the principle and remember it, because it is far more powerful than all the politicians and political machines. It is above and beyond the control of all the labor unions. It cannot be swayed nor influenced or bribed by racketeers or self-appointed leaders in any calling. Moreover, it has an all-seeing eye and a perfect system of bookkeeping in which it keeps an accurate account of the transaction of every human being engaged in the business of trying to get without giving. Sooner or later, its auditors come around, look over the records of the individuals, both great and small, and demand an accounting. Wall Street, big business, capital, predatory interests, and whatever name you choose to give the system which has given us American freedom represents a group of men who understand, respect, and adapt themselves to this powerful law of economics. Their financial continuation depends upon their respecting the law. Most people living in America like this country, it's a capitalistic system and all. I must confess, I know of no better country where one may find greater opportunities to accumulate riches. Judging by their act and deeds, there are some in this country who do not like it. That of course is their privilege. If they do not like this country, it's a capitalistic system, it's boundless opportunities, they have the privilege of clearing out. Always there are other countries such as Germany, Russia, Italy, where one may try one's hand at enjoying freedom and accumulating riches, providing one is not too particular. America provides all the freedom and all the opportunity to accumulate riches that any honest person may require. When one goes hunting for game, one select hunting grounds where game is plentiful. When seeking riches, the same rules would naturally obtain. If it is riches you are seeking, do not overlook the possibilities of a country whose citizens are so rich that women alone spend over $200 million annually for lipsticks, robe and cosmetics. Think twice, you who are seeking riches, before trying to destroy the capitalistic system of a country whose citizens spend over $50 million a year for greeting cards with which to express their appreciation of their freedom. If it is money you are seeking, consider carefully a country that spends hundreds of millions of dollars annually for cigarettes, and bulk of the income from which goes to only 4 major companies engaged in supplying these national builders of non-challenge and quiet nerves. By all means, give plenty of consideration to a country whose people spend annually more than $15 million for the privileges of seeking moving pictures and toss in a few additional millions for liquor, narcotics, and other less potent soft drinks and giggle waters. Do not be in too big a hurry to get away from a country whose people willingly, even eagerly, hand over millions of dollars annually for football, baseball, and prize fights. And by all means, stick by a country whose inhabitants give up more than $1 million a year for chewing gum and another $1 million for safety razor blades. Remember also that this is but the beginning of the available sources for the accumulation of the wealth. Only a few of the luxurious and non-essentials have been mentioned. But remember that the business of producing, transporting and marketing these few items of merchandise give regular employment to many millions of people and many millions of men and women who receives for their services many millions of dollars monthly and spend it freely for both the luxuries and necessities. Especially remember that back of all this exchange of merchandise and personal services may be found an abundance of opportunity to accumulate riches. Here our American freedom comes to one's aid. There is nothing to stop you and or anyone from engaging in any portion of the effort necessary to carry on these businesses. If one has superior talent, training, experience, one may accumulate riches in large amounts. Those not so fortunate to may accumulate smaller amounts. Anyone may earn a living in return for a very nominal amount of labor. So there you are, opportunity has spread its wares before you. Step up to the front, select what you want, create your plan, put the plan into action and follow through with persistence. Capitalistic America will do the rest. You can depend upon this much. Capitalistic America ensures every person the opportunity to render useful service and to collect riches in a proportion to the value of the service. The system denies no one this right, but it does not and cannot promise something for nothing, because the system itself is irrevocably controlled by the law of economics, which neither recognizes nor tolerates for long getting without giving. The law of economics was passed by nature. There is no Supreme Court to which violations of this law may appeal. The law hands out both penalties for its violation and appropriate rewards for its observance without interference or the possibility of interference by human beings. The law cannot be repealed. It is fixed as the stars in the heaven and the subject to a part of the same system that controls the stars. May one refuse to adapt oneself to the law of economics? Certainly this is a free country where all men are born with equal rights, including the privilege of ignoring the law of economics. What happens then? Well, nothing happens until large number of men join forces for the avowed purpose of ignoring the law and taking the what they want by force. Then comes the dictator with a well-organized firing squad and machine guns. We have not yet reached that stage in America, but we have heard all we want to know about how the system works. Perhaps we all be fortunate enough not to demand personal knowledge of so gruesome a reality. Doubtless we shall prefer to continue with our freedom of speech, freedom of deed, and freedom of render useful service in return for riches. The practice by government officials of extending to men and women by the privilege of raiding the public treasury in return for votes, something results in election, but as night follows day, the final payoff comes when every penny wrongfully used must be repaid with compound interest on compound interest. If those who make the grab are not forced to repay, the burden falls on their children and their children's children, even unto the third and fourth generations. There is no way to avoid the debt. Men can and sometimes do form themselves into groups for the purpose of crowding wages up and working hours down. There is a point beyond which they cannot go. It is the point at which the law of economics steps in and the sheriffs gets both the employers and employees. For 6 years from 1929 to 1935, the people of America, both rich and poor, barely missing seeing the old man's economics hand over to the sheriff all the businesses and industries and banks. It was not a pretty sight. It did not increase our respect for the mob psychology through which men cast reason to the winds and start trying to get without giving. We who went through those 6 discouraging years when fear was in the saddle and the faith was on the ground cannot forget how ruthlessly the law of economics exacted its toll from both rich and poor, weak and strong, and old and young. We shall not wish to go through another such experience. These observations are not founded upon short-time experiences. They are the result of 25 years of careful analysis of the methods of both the most successful and most unsuccessful men of America ever known. Let us get ahead with chapter number 8, Decision, the mastery of procrastination, the seventh step towards riches. Accurate analysis of over 25,000 men and women who had experienced failure disclosed the fact that lack of decision was near the head of the list of 30 major causes of failure. This is no mere statement of theory, it is a fact. Procrastination, the opposite of a decision, is a common enemy which practically every man must conquer. You will have an opportunity to test your capacity to reach quick and definite decisions when you finish reading this book and are ready to begin putting into action the principles which it describes. Analysis of several hundred people who had accumulated fortunes well beyond the $1 million mark disclosed the fact that every one of them had the habit of reaching decision promptly and of changing these decisions slowly if and when they were changed. People who fail to accumulate money without exception have the habit of reaching decision, if at all, very slowly and of changing these decisions quickly and often. One of Henry Ford's most outstanding qualities is his habit of reaching decisions quickly and definitely and changing them slowly. This quality is so pronounced in Mr. Ford that it has given him the reputation of being obstinate. It was this quality which promoted Mr. Ford to continue to manufacture his famous Model T, the world's ugliest car, when all of his advisors and many of the purchasers of the car were urging him to change it. Perhaps Mr. Ford delayed too long in making the change. But the other side of the story is that Mr. Ford's firmness of a decision yielded a huge fortune before the change in model became necessary. There is but little doubt that Mr. Ford's habit of definiteness of a decision assumes the proportion of obstinacy, but this quality is preferable to slowness in reaching decisions and quickness in changing them. The majority of people who fail to accumulate money sufficient for their needs are generally easily influenced by the opinions of others. They permit the newspaper and the gossiping neighbors to do their thinking for them. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on the earth. Everyone has a flock of opinions ready to be wished upon anyone who will accept them. If you are influenced by opinions when you reach decisions, you will not succeed in any undertaking, much less in that of transmuting your own desire into money. If you are influenced by the opinions of others, you will have no desire of your own. Keep your own counsel when you begin to put into practice the principles described here by reaching your own decisions and following them. Take no one into your confidence except the members of your mastermind group, and be very sure in your selection of this group that you choose only those who will be in complete sympathy and harmony with your purpose. Close friends and relatives, while not meaning to do so, often handicap one through opinions and sometimes through ridicule, which is meant to be humorous. Thousands of men and women carry inferiority complex with them all through life because some well-meaning but ignorant person destroyed their confidence through opinions or ridicule. You have a brain and mind of your own. Use it and reach your own decisions. If you need facts or information from other people to enable you to reach decisions, as you probably will in many instances, acquire these facts or secure the information you need quietly without disclosing your purpose. It is characteristic of people who have but a smattering or a veneer of knowledge to try to give the impression that they have much knowledge. Such people generally do too much talking and too little listening. Keep your eyes and ears wide open and your mouth closed if you wish to acquire the habit of prompt decision. Those who talk too much do little Else, if you talk more than you listen, you not only deprive yourself of many opportunities to accumulate useful knowledge, but you also disclose your plans and purposes to people who will take a great delight in defeating you because they envy you. Remember also that every time you open your mouth in the presence of a person who has an abundance of knowledge, you display to that person your exact stock of knowledge or your lack of it. Genuine wisdom is usually conspicuous through modesty and silence. Keep in mind the fact that every person with whom you associate is, like yourself, seeking the opportunity to accumulate money. If you talk about your plans too freely, you may be surprised when you learn that some other person has beaten you to your goal by putting into action ahead of you the plans of which you talked unwisely. Let one of your first decisions to be keep a closed mouth and open ears and eyes. As a reminder to itself to follow this advice, it will be helpful if you copy the following epigram in large letters and place it where you will see it daily. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it. I'll need to repeat this. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it. This is the equivalent of saying that deeds and not words are what counts most. Deeds and not words are what counts most. Freedom or death on a decision. The value of decisions depends upon the courage required to render them. The great decisions which served as the foundation of civilization were reached by assuming great risks, which often meant the possibility of death. Lincoln's decision to issue his famous Proclamation of Emancipation, which gave freedom to the colored people of America, was rendered with full understanding that his act would turn thousands of friends and political supporters against him. He knew too that the carrying out of that proclamation would mean death to thousands of men on the battlefield. In the end, it cost Lincoln his life that required courage. Socrates' decision to drink the cup of poison rather than compromise in his personal belief was a decision of courage. It turned time ahead 1,000 years and gave to people then unborn the right to freedom of thoughts and speech. The decision of Jane Robert Ely when he came to the parting of the way with the Union and took up the cause of South was a decision of courage, for he well knew that it might cost him his own life, that it would surely cost the lives of others. But the greatest decision of all time, as far as any American citizen is concerned, was reached in Philadelphia, July 4, 1776, when 56 men signed their names to a document which they well knew would bring freedom to all Americans or leave every one of the 56 hanging from a gallows. You have heard of this famous document, but you may not have drawn from it a great lesson in personal achievement. It so plainly taught. We all remember the date of this momentous decision, but few of us realize what courage that decision required. We remember our history as it was taught. We remember dates and the names of the men who fought. We remember Valley Forge and Yorktown. We remember George Washington and Lord Cornwallis. But we know little of the real forces back of these names, dates, and places. We know still less of that intangible power which ensured us freedom long before Washington's armies reached Yorktown. We read the history of the revolution and falsely imagine that George Washington was the father of our country and that it was he who won our freedom, while the truth is Washington was only an accessory after the fact, because victory of his armies had been ensured long before the Lord Cornwallis surrendered. This is not intended to rob Washington of any of the glory he so richly merited. Its purpose rather is to give greater attention to the astounding power that was the real cause of his victory. It is nothing short of tragedy that the writers of history have missed entirely even the slightest reference to the irresistible power which gave birth and freedom to the nation destined to set up new standards of independence for all the peoples of the earth. I say it is a tragedy because it is the self-same power which must be used by every individual who surmounts the difficulties of life and forces life to pay the price asked. Let us briefly review the events which gave birth to the power. The story begins with an incident in Boston, March 5, 1770. British soldiers were patrolling the streets by their presence, openly threatening the citizens. The colonists resented armed men marching in their midst. They began to express their resentment openly, hurling stones as well as epithets at the marching soldiers until the commanding officer gave orders, "Fix bayonets, charge." The battle was on. It resulted in a death and injury of many. The incident aroused such resentment that the provincial assembly, made up of prominent colonists, called a meeting for the purpose of taking definite action. Two of the members of that assembly were John Hancock and Samuel Adams. Long live their names. They spoke up courageously and declared that a move must be made to eject all British soldiers from Boston. Remember this, a decision in the minds of two men might properly be called the beginning of the freedom which we of the United States now enjoy. Remember too that the decision of these two men called for faith and courage because it was dangerous. Before the assembly adjourned, Samuel Adams was appointed to call on the governor of province, Hutchinson, and demand the withdrawal of the British troops. The request was granted. The troops were removed from the Boston, but the incident was not closed. It has caused a situation destined to change the entire trend of civilization. Strange is not how the great changes such as the American Revolution and the World War often have their beginnings in circumstances which seem unimportant. It is interesting also to observe that these important changes usually begin in the form of a definite decision in the minds of a relatively small number of people. Few of us know the history of our country well enough to realize that John Hancock, Samuel Adams, and Richard Henry Lee of the province of Virginia were the real fathers of our country. Richard Henry Lee became an important factor in this story by reason of the fact that he and the Samuel Adams communicated frequently by correspondence, sharing freely their fears and their hopes concerning the welfare of the people of their province. From this practice, Adams conceived the idea that a mutual exchange of letters between the 13 colonies might help to bring about the coordination of the efforts so badly needed in connection with the solution of their problems. 2 years after a clash with the soldiers in Boston, March 1772, the Adams presented this idea to the assembly in the form of a motion that correspondence committee be established among the colonies with a definitely appointed correspondent in each colony for the purpose of friendly cooperation for the betterment of the colonies of British America. Mark well this incident. It was the beginning of the organization of the far-flung power destined to give freedom to you and to me. The mastermind had already been organized. It consisted of Adams, Lee, and Hancock. I tell you further that if two of you agree upon the earth concerning anything for which you ask, it will come to you from my Father who is in heaven. The committee of correspondence was organized. Observe that this move provided the way for increasing the power of mastermind by adding to it men from all the colonies. Take notice that this procedure constituted the first organized planning of the disgruntled colonists. In union, there is a strength. The citizens of the colonies had been waging disorganized warfare against the British soldiers through incidents similar to the Boston riot, but nothing of benefit had been accomplished. Their individual grievances had not been consolidated under one mastermind. No group of individuals had put their hearts, minds, souls, and bodies together in one definite decision to settle their difficulty with the British once and for all, until Adams, Hancock, and Lee got together. Meanwhile, the British were not idle. They too were doing some planning and masterminding on their own account, with the advantage of having back up the money and organized the soldiery. The Crown appointed Gage to supplant Hutchinson as the governor of the Massachusetts. One of the new governor's first act was to send a messenger to call on Samuel Adams for the purpose of endeavoring to stop his opposition by fear. We can best understand the spirit of what happened by quoting the conversation between the Colonel Fenton, the messenger sent by Gage, and the Adams. Colonel Fenton: I have been authorized by Governor Gage to assure you, Mr. Adams, that the governor has been empowered to confer upon you such benefits as would be satisfactory. Endeavor to win Adams by promise of bribes upon the condition that you engage to cease in your opposition to the measures of the government. It is the governor's advice to you, sir, not to incur the further of the government. It is the governor's advice to you, sir, not to incur the further displeasure of His Majesty. Your conduct has been such as mistake you liable to penalties of an amount of Henry VIII, by which person can be sent to England for a trial for treason or misprision of treason at the discretion of a governor of a province. But by the changing your political course, you will not only receive great personal advantage, but you will make your peace with the king. Samuel Adams had the choice of two decisions. He would seize his opposition and receive personal bribes, and he could continue and run the risk of being hanged. Clearly, the time had come when Adams was forced to reach instantly a decision which could have cost his life. The majority of men would have found it difficult to reach such a decision. The majority would have sent back an evasive reply, but not Adams. He insisted upon Colonel Fenton's word of honor that the colonel would deliver to the governor the answer exactly as Adams would give it to him. Adams' answer: then you may tell Governor Gage that I trust I have long since made my peace with the King of Kings. No personal consideration shall induce me to abandon the righteous cause of my country. And tell Governor Gage it is the advice of Samuel Adams to him no longer to insult the feelings of exasperated people. Comment as to the character of his man seems unnecessary. It must be obvious to all who read this astounding masters that his sender proposed royalty of the highest order. This is important. Racketeers and dishonest politicians have prostituted the honor for which such man as Adams died. When Governor Gage received Adams' caustic reply, he flew into a rage and issued a proclamation which read, I do hereby in His Majesty's name offer and promise his most gracious pardon to all persons who shall forthwith lay down their arms and return to the duties of peaceable subject, excepting only from the benefit of such pardons Samuel Adams and the John Hancock, whose offenses are of too flagitious a nature to admit of any other consideration but that of condign punishment. As one might say, in a modern slang, Adams and Hancock were on the spot. The threat of the irate governor forced the two men to reach another decision equally as dangerous. They hurriedly called a secret meeting of their staunchest followers. Here the mastermind began to take on momentum. After the meeting had been called to order, Adams locked the door, placed the key in his pocket, and informed all present that it was imperative that the Congress of the colonists be organized and that no man should leave the room until the decision for such a Congress had been reached. Great excitement followed. Some vagued the possible consequence of such a radicalism. Old man fear. Some expressed grave doubt as to be the wisdom of so definite a decision in a defense of the crown. Locked in that room were two men immune to fear, blind to the possibility of failure, Hancock and Adams. Through the influence of their minds, the others were induced to agree that through the correspondence committee, arrangement should be made for a meeting of the First Continental Congress to be held in the Philadelphia September 5th, 1774. Remember this date, it is more important than July 4, 1776. If there had been no decision to hold a Continental Congress, there could have been no signing of the Declaration of Independence. Before the first meeting of the new Congress, another leader in a different section of the country was deep in the throes of publishing the summary view of the rights of British America. He was Thomas Jefferson of the province of Virginia, whose relationship to Lord Dunmore, representative of the Crown in the Virginia, was strained as that of Hancock and Adams with their governor. Shortly after his summary of right was published, Jefferson was informed that he was subject of prosecution for high treason against His Majesty's government. Inspired by the threat, one of the Jefferson's colleagues, Patrick Henry, boldly spoke his mind in concluding his remark with a sentence which shall remain forever a classic. If this be a treason, then make the most of it. It was such men as they who, without power, without authority, without military strength, without money, sat in solemn consideration of the destiny of the colonies, beginning at the opening of the First Continental Congress and continuing at intervals for 2 years, until on June 7, 1776, Richard Henry Lee arose, addressed the chair, and the startled assembly made this motion. Gentlemen, I make the motion that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they be absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. Lee's astounding motion was discussed fervently and at such length that he began to lose patience. Finally, after days of argument, he again took the floor and declared in a clear, firm voice, Mr. President, we have discussed this issue for days. It is the only course of us to follow. Why then, sir, do we longer delay? Why still deliberate? Let this happy day give birth to an American republic. Let her arise not to devastate and to conquer, but to re-establish the reign of peace and of law. The eyes of Europe are fixed upon us. She demands of us a living example of freedom that may exhibit a contrast in the felicity of the citizen to the ever-increasing tyranny. Before his motion was finally voted upon, Lee was called back to Virginia because of serious family illness, but before leaving, he placed his cause in the hands of his friend Thomas Jefferson, who promised to fight until favorable action was taken. Shortly thereafter, the President of the Congress, Hancock, appointed Jefferson as chairman of the committee to draw up a Declaration of Independence. Long and hard the committee labored on a document which would mean, when accepted by the Congress, that every man who signed it would be signing his own death warrant should the colonies lose in the fight with Great Britain, which was sure to follow. The document was drawn, and on June 28 the original draft was read before the Congress. For several days it was discussed, altered and made ready. On July 1776, Thomas Jefferson stood before the assembly and fearlessly read the most momentous decision ever placed upon paper. When in the course of the human events it is necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and the nature's God entitled them, A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. When Jefferson finished, the document was voted upon, accepted, and signed by the 56 men, everyone staking his own life upon his decision to write his name. By the decision came into existence a nation destined to bring to mankind forever the privilege of making decisions. By decisions made in a similar spirit of faith, and only by such decisions can men solve their personal problems and win for themselves high estates of material and spiritual wealth. Let us not forget this. Analyze the events which led to the Declaration of Independence, and be convinced that this nation, which now holds a position of commanding respect and power among all nations of the world, was born of a decision created by the mastermind consisting of 56 men. Note well the fact that it was their decision which ensured the success of Washington's army, because the spirit of that decision was in the heart of every soldier who fought with him, and served as a spiritual power which recognizes no such a thing as a failure. Note also with great personal benefit that the power which gave this nation its freedom is the same power that must be used by every individual who becomes self-determining. This power is made up of the principles described in this book. It will not be difficult to defeat. In the story of the Declaration of Independence, at least 6 of these principles, desire, decision, faith, persistence, the mastermind, and the organized planning, throughout this philosophy will be found the suggestion that thought backed by strong desire has a tendency to transmute itself into its physical equivalent. Before passing on, I wish to leave with you the suggestion that one may find in this story and in the story of Organization of United States Steel Corporation a perfect description of the method by which thought makes this astounding transformation. Anywhere search for the secret of the method, do not too far a miracle, because you will not find it. You will find only the eternal laws of nature. These laws are available to every person who has the faith and courage to use them. They may be used to bring the freedom to a nation or to accumulate riches. There is no charge save the time necessary to understand and appropriate them. Those who reach decisions promptly and definitely know that they want and generally get it. The leaders in every walk of life decide quickly and firmly. That is the major reason why they are leaders. The world has the habit of making room for the man whose words and actions show that he knows where he is going. Indecision is a habit which usually begins in youth. The habit takes on permanency as the youth goes through graded schools, high schools, and even through colleges without definiteness of purpose. The major weakness of all educational system is that they neither teach nor encourage the habit of a definite decision. It would be beneficial if no college would permit the enrollment of any student unless and until the student declares his major purpose in matriculating. It would be of still greater benefit if every student who enters the grader school were compelled to accept training in the habit of decision and forced to pass a satisfactory examination on this subject before being permitted to advance in his grades. The habit of indecision acquired because of the deficiencies of our school system goes with the student into the occupation he chooses. If in fact he chooses his occupation, generally the youth just out of school seeks any job that can be found. He takes the first place he finds because he has fallen into the habit of indecision. 98 out of every 100 people working for wages today are in the position they hold because they lacked the definiteness of decision to plan a definite position and the knowledge of how to choose an employer. Definiteness of decision always requires courage, sometimes very great courage. The 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence staked their lives on the decision to affix their signatures to that document. The person who reaches a definite decision to procure the particular job and make life pay the price he asks does not stake his life on that decision. He stakes his economic freedom, financial independence, riches, desirable business and professional positions are not within reach of the person who neglects or refuses to expect, plan and demand these things. The person who desires riches is in the same spirit that Samuel Adams desired freedom for the colonies, is sure to accumulate wealth. In the chapter on organized planning, you will find complete instructions for marketing every type of personal services. You will find also detailed information on how to choose employer you prefer and the particular job you desire. These instructions will be of no value to you unless you definitely decide to organize them into a plan of action. Let us get ahead with chapter number 9, persistence. The sustained effort necessary to induce faith, the 8th step towards riches. Persistence is an essential factor in the procedure of transmuting desire into its monetary equivalent. The basis of persistence is the power of will. Willpower and desire, when properly combined, make an irresistible pair. Men who accumulate great fortunes are generally known as cold-blooded and sometimes ruthless. Men who accumulate great fortunes are generally known as cold-blooded and sometimes ruthless. Often they are misunderstood. What they have is the willpower which they mix with persistence and place back of their desires to ensure the attainment of their objectives. Henry Ford has been generally misunderstood to the ruthless and cold-blooded. This misconception grew out of Ford's habit of following through in all of his plans with persistence. The majority of the people are ready to throw their aims and purposes overboard and give up at the first sign of opposition or misfortune. A few carry on despite all oppositions until they attain their goals. These few are the Fords, Carnegies, Rockefellers and Edisons. There may be no heroic connotation to the word persistence, but the quality is to the character of man what carbon is of steel. The building of a fortune generally involves the application of the entire 13 factors of this philosophy. These principles must be understood. They must be applied with persistence by all who accumulate money. If you are following this book with the intention of applying the knowledge it conveys, your first taste as to your persistence will come when you begin to follow the 6 steps described in the second chapter. Unless you are one of the 2 out of every 100 who already have the definite goal at which you are aiming and a definite plan for its attainment, you may read the instructions and then pass on with your daily routine and never comply with those instructions. The author is checking you up at this point because lack of persistence is one of the major causes of failure. Moreover, experience with thousands of people has proved that lack of persistence is a weakness common to the majority of men. It is a weakness which may be overcome by effort. The ease with which lack of persistence may be conquered will depend entirely upon the intensity of one's desire. The starting point of all achievements is desire. Keep this constantly in mind. Weak desire brings weak results, just as a small amount of fire makes a small amount of heat. If you find yourself lacking in persistence, this weakness may be remedied by building a strong fire under your desires. Continue to read through the end and then go back to the chapter 2 and start immediately to carry out the instructions given in connection with the 6 steps. The eagerness with which you follow these instructions will indicate clearly how much or how little you really desire to accumulate money. If you find that you are different, you may be sure that you have not yet acquired the money consciousness, which you must possess before you can be sure of accumulating a fortune. Fortunes gravitate to men whose minds have been prepared to attract them just as surely as water gravitates to the ocean. In this book may be found all the stimuli necessary to attune any normal mind to the vibrations with which will attract the object of one's desires. If you find you are weak in persistence, center your attention upon the instructions contained in the chapter on power, surround yourself with mastermind group, and through the cooperative efforts of the members of this group, you can develop persistence. You will find additional instructions for the development of persistence in the chapters on association and the subconscious mind. Follow the instructions outlined in these chapters until your habit nature hands over to your subconscious mind a clear picture of the object of your desire. From that point on, you will not be handicapped by lack of persistence. Your subconscious mind works continuously while you are awake and while you are asleep. Spasmodic or occasional effort to apply the rules will be of no value to you. To get results, you must apply all the rules until their application becomes a fixed habit with you. In no other way can you develop the necessary money consciousness. Poverty is attracted to the one whose mind is favorable to it, as money is attracted to him whose mind has been deliberately prepared to attract it, and through the same laws. Poverty consciousness will voluntarily seize the mind which is not occupied with the money consciousness. A poverty consciousness develops without conscious application of habits favorable to it. The money consciousness must be created to order unless one is born with such a consciousness. Catch the full significance of the statement in the preceding paragraph and you will understand the importance of persistence in the accumulation of fortune. Without persistence, you will be defeated. Even before you start with persistence, you will win. If you have ever experienced a nightmare, you will realize the value of persistence. You are lying in bed half awake with a feeling that you are about to smother. You are unable to turn over or to move a muscle. You realize that you must begin to regain control over your muscles. Through persistent effort of willpower, you finally manage to move the fingers of one hand. By continuing to move your fingers, you extend your control to the muscles of one arm until you can lift it. Then you gain control of the other arm. In the same manner, you finally gain control over the muscles of one leg and then extend it to the other leg. Then with one supreme effort of will, you regain complete control over your muscular system and snap out of your nightmare. The trick has been turned step by step. You may find it necessary to snap out of your mental inertia through a similar procedure, moving slowly at fast, then increasing your speed until you gain complete control over your will. Be persistent no matter how slowly you may at first have to move. With persistence will come success. With persistence will come success. If you select your mastermind group with care, you will have in it at least one person who will lead you in the development of persistence. Some men who have accumulated great fortunes did so because of necessity. They developed the habit of persistence because they were so closely driven by the circumstances that they had to become persistent. There is no substitute for persistence. It cannot be supplemented by any other quality. Remember this, and it will hearten you in the beginning when the going may seem difficult and slow. Those who have cultivated the habit of persistence seems to enjoy insurance against failure. No matter how many times they are defeated, they finally arrive up toward the top of the ladder. Sometimes it appears that there is a hidden guide whose duty is to test man through all sorts of discouraging experiences. Those who pick themselves up after defeat and keep on trying arrive and the world cries, "Bravo, I knew you could do it." The hidden guide lets no one enjoy great achievement without passing the persistence test. Those who can't take it simply do not make the grade. Those who can take it are bountifully rewarded for their persistence. They pursue as their compensation whatever goal they are pursuing. This is not all. They receive something indefinitely, they receive something infinitely more important than material compensation, the knowledge that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. Every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. There are expectations of this rule. A few people know from experience the soundness of persistence. They are the ones who have not accepted defeat as being anything more than temporary. They are the ones whose desires are so persistently applied that defeat is finally changed into victory. We who stand on the sidelines of life see the overwhelmingly large number who go down in defeat, never to rise again. We see the few who take the punishment of defeat as an urge to greater efforts. These fortunately never learn to accept life's reverse gear, but what we do not see, what most of us never suspect of existing, is the silent but irresistible power which comes to the rescue of those who fight on in the face of discouragement. If we speak of this power at all, we call it persistence and let it go at that. One thing we all know, if one does not possess persistence, one does not achieve noteworthy success in any calling. As these lines are being written, I look up from my work and see before me, less than a block away, the great mysterious Broadway, the graveyard of dead hopes, and the front porch of opportunity. From all over the world, people have come to Broadway seeking fame, fortune, power, love, or whatever it is that human beings call success. Once in a great while, someone steps out from the long procession of seekers, and the world hears that another person has mastered Broadway. But Broadway is not easily nor quickly conquered. She acknowledges talent, recognizes genius, pays off in money only after one has refused to quit. Then we know he has discovered the secret of how to conquer Broadway. The secret is always inseparably attached to one word: persistence. The secret is told in the struggle of the Fanny Hurst, whose persistence conquered the great white way. She came to New York in 1915 to convert writing into riches. The conversation did not come quickly, but it came. For 4 years, Miss Hurst learned about the sidewalks of New York from first-hand experience. She spent her days laboring and her nights hoping. When hope grew dim, she did not say, "All right, Broadway, you win." She said, "Very well, Broadway, you may whip some, but not me. I am going to force you to give up." One publisher, the Saturday Evening Post, sent the 36 rejection slips before she broke the ice and got a story across. The average writer, like the average in other walks of life, would have given up the job when the first rejection slip came. She pounded the pavements of 4 years to the tune of the publisher's no, because she was determined to win. Then came to the payoff. The spell had been broken, and unseen guide had tasted Fanny Hurst, and she could take it. From that time on, publishers made a beaten path to her door. Money came so fast she hardly had time to count it. Then the moving picture men discovered her, and money came not in a small change but in floods. The moving picture rights to her latest novel, Great Laughter, brought $100,000, said to be the highest price ever paid for a story before publication. Her royalties from the sale of the book probably will run much more. Briefly, you have a description of what persistence is capable of achieving. Fanny Hurst is no exception. Wherever men and women accumulate great riches, you may be sure they first acquired persistence. Broadway will give any beggar a cup of coffee and a sandwich, but it demands persistence of those who go after the big stakes. Kate Smith will say Amen when she reads this. For years she sang without money and without price before any microphone she could reach. Broadway said to her, come and get it if you can take it. She did take it until one happy day Broadway got tired and said, oh, what's the use? You don't know when you are wiped, so name your price and go to work in earnest. Mrs. Smith named her price. It was plenty, away up in a figure so high that 1 week's salary is far more than most people make in a whole year. Verily, it pays to be persistent. And here is an encouraging statement which carries with it a suggestion of great significance. Thousands of singers who excel Kate Smith are walking up and down Broadway looking for a break without success. Countless others have come and gone. Many of them sang well enough, but they failed to make the grade because they lacked the courage to keep on keeping on until Broadway became tired and turning them away. Persistence is a state of mind, therefore it can be cultivated. Like all states of mind, persistence is based upon a definite causes. Among them, these first, definiteness of purpose. Knowing what one wants is the first and perhaps the most important step towards the development of persistence. A strong motive forces one to surmount many difficulties. Second, desire. It is comparatively easy to acquire and to maintain persistence in pursuing the object of intense desire. Third, self-reliance. Belief is one's ability to carry out a plan encourages one to follow the plan through with the persistence. Self-reliance can be developed through the principle described in the chapter on autosuggestion. Fourth, definiteness of plans. Organized plans, even though they may be weak and entirely impractical, encourage persistence. Fifth, an accurate knowledge. Knowing that one's plans are sound based upon experience or observation encourages persistence. Guessing instead of knowing destroys persistence. Then, sixth, cooperation. Sympathy, understanding, and harmonious cooperation with others tend to develop persistence. Seventh, willpower. The habit of concentrating one's thoughts upon the building of plans for the attainment of definite 164 to 165 purpose leads to persistence. 8th, habit. Persistence is the direct result of habit. The mind absorbs and becomes a part of the daily experiences upon which it feeds. Fear, the worst of all enemies, can be effectively cured by forced repetition of acts of courage. Everyone who has seen active service in war knows this. Before leaving the subject of persistence, take inventory of yourself and determine in what particular, if any, you are lacking in this essential quality. Measure yourself courageously point by point and see how many of the 8 factors of persistence you lack. The analysis may lead to discoveries that will give you a new grip on yourself. Symptoms of lack of persistence. Here you will find the real enemies which stand between you and a noteworthy achievement. Here you will find not only the symptoms indicating weakness of persistence but also the deeply seated subconscious causes of this weakness. Study the list carefully and face yourself squarely if you really wish to know who you are and what you are capable of doing. These are the weaknesses which must be mastered by all who accumulate riches. First, failure to recognize and to clearly define exactly what one wants. Second, procrastination with or without cause, usually backed up with a formidable array of alibis and excuses. Third, lack of interest in acquiring specialized knowledge. Fourth, indecision, the habit of passing the buck on the occasions instead of facing issues squarely, also backed by alibis. Fifth, the habit of relying upon alibis instead of creating definite plans for the solution of problems. Sixth, self-satisfaction. There is but little remedy for this affliction this affliction and no hope for those who suffer from it. 7. Indifference usually reflected in one's readiness to compromise on all occasions rather than meet opposition and fight it. 8th one, the habit of blaming others for one's mistake and accepting unfavorable circumstances as being unavoidable. 9th one, weakness of desire due to neglect in the choice of motives that impel action. 10th one, willingness, even eagerness to quit at the first sign of defeat based upon one or more of the 6 basic fears. 11. Lack of organized plans placed in writing where they may be analyzed. 12. The habit of neglecting to move on ideas or to grasp opportunity when it presents itself. 13th, wishing instead of willing. 14th, the habit of compromising with poverty instead of aiming at riches, general absence of ambition to be, to do, and to own. 15th one, searching for all the shortcuts to riches, trying to get without giving a fair equivalent, usually reflected in the habit of gambling, endeavoring to drive sharp bargains. And 16th one, fear of criticism, failure to create a plan and to put them into action because of what other people will think, do, or say. This enemy belongs at the head of the list because it generally exists in one's subconscious mind where its presence is not recognized. See the 6 basic fears in the latter chapter. Let us examine some of the symptoms of the fear of criticism. The majority of the people permit relatives, friends, and the public at large to so influence them that they cannot live their own lives because they fear criticism. Huge numbers of the people make mistakes in marriage, stand by the bargain, and go through life miserable and unhappy because they fear criticism, which may follow if they correct the mistake. Anyone who has submitted to this form of fear knows the irreparable damage it works by destroying ambition, self-reliance, and the desire to achieve. Millions of people neglect to acquire belated educations after having left school because they fear criticism. Countless number of men and women, both young and old, permit relatives to wreck their lives in the name of duty because they fear criticism. Duty does not require any person to submit to the destruction of his personal ambitions and the right to live his own life in his own way. People refuse to take chances in business because they fear the criticism which may follow if they fail. The fear of criticism in such cases is stronger than the desire of success. Too many people refuse to set high goals for themselves or even neglect selecting a career because they fear the criticism of relatives and friends who may say, "Don't aim so high, people will think you are crazy." When Andrew Carnegie suggested that I devote 20 years to the organization of a philosophy of individual achievement, my first impulse to thought was fear of what people might say. The suggestion set up a goal for me far out of proportion to any I had ever conceived. As quick as a flash, my mind began to create alibis and excuses, all of them traceable to the inherent fear of criticism. Something inside of me said, "You can't do it. The job is too big and requires too much time. What your relatives think of you? How will you earn a living?" No one has ever organized a philosophy of success. What a right how you believe you can do it. Who are you anyway to aim so high? Remember your humble worth. What do you know about philosophy? People will think you are crazy, and they did. Why hasn't some other person done this before now? These and many other questions flashed into my mind and demanded attention. It seemed as if the whole world had suddenly turned its attention to me with the purpose of ridiculing me into giving up all desires to carry out Mr. Carnegie's suggestion. I had a fine opportunity then and there to kill off ambition before it gained control of me. Later in life, after having analyzed thousands of people, I discovered that most ideas are stillborn and need the birth of life injected into them through definite plans of immediate action. The time to nurse an idea is at the time of its birth. Every minute it lives gives it a better chance of surviving. The fear of criticism is at the bottom of the destruction of most ideas which never reach the planning and action stage. Many people believe that material success is the result of favorable breaks. There is an element of ground for the belief, but those depending entirely upon luck are nearly always disappointed because they overlook another important factor which must be present before one can be sure of success. It is the knowledge with which favorable breaks can be made to order. During the Depression, W.C. Fields, the comedian, lost all his money and found himself without income, without a job, and his means of earning a living no longer existed. Moreover, he was past 60 when many men consider themselves old. He was so eager to stage a comeback that he offered to work without pay in a new field, that is movies. In addition to his other troubles, he fell and injured his neck. Too many that would have been the place to give up and quit, but Fields was persistent. He knew that if he carried on, he could get the breaks sooner or later, and he did get them, but not by chance. Mary Dressler found herself down and out with her money gone, with no job when she was about 60. She too went after the breaks and got them. Her persistence brought an astounding triumph late in life, long beyond the age when most men and women are done with ambition to achieve. Eddie Cantor lost his money in the 1929 stock crash, but he still had his persistence and his courage. With these plus two prominent eyes, he exploited himself back into an income of $10,000 a week. Verily, if one has persistence, one can get along very well without many other qualities. The only break anyone can afford to rely upon is a self-made break. These come through the application of persistence. The starting point is a definiteness of a purpose. Examine the first 100 people you meet, ask them what they want most in life, and 98 of them will not be able to tell them. If you press them for an answer, some will say security, many will say money, a few will say happiness, and others will say fame and power, and still others will say social recognition is in a living ability to sing, dance, or write, but none of them will be able to define these terms or give the slightest indication of a plan by which they hope to attain these vaguely expressed wishes. Riches do not respond to wishes. They respond only to definite plans backed by definite desires through constant persistence. How to develop persistence? There are 4 simple steps which lead to a habit of persistence. They call for no great amount of intelligence, no particular amount of education, and but a little time or effort. The necessary steps are: first one, a definite purpose backed by burning desire for its fulfillment. Second, a definite plan expressed in continuous action. Third, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences, including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. And fourth one, a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through with both plan and purpose. I will repeat. How you can develop the persistence by following 4 steps. First step, a definite purpose backed by burning desire for its fulfillment. Second, a definite plan expressed in continuous action. Third, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences, including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. And fourth one, a friendly alliance with one or more person who will encourage one to follow through with both plan and purpose. These four steps are essential for success in all walks of life. The entire purpose of the 13 principles of this philosophy is to enable one to take these four steps as a matter of habit. These are the steps by which one may control one's economic destiny. They are the steps that lead to freedom and independence of thought. They are the steps that lead to riches in a small or great quantities. They lead the way to power, fame, and worldly recognition. They are the four steps which guarantee favorable breaks, and they are the steps that convert dream into physical realities. They lead also the mastery of fear, discouragement, and indifference. There is a magnificent reward for all who learn to take these four steps. It is the privilege of writing one's own ticket and of making life yield whatever price is asked. I have no way of knowing the facts, but I venture to conjecture that Mrs. Wall Simpson's great love for a man was not accidental nor the result of favorable breaks alone. There was a burning desire and careful searching at every step of the way. Her first duty was to love. What is the greatest thing on earth? The master called it love, not man-made rules, criticism, bitterness, slander, or political marriages, but love. She knew what she wanted not after she made the Prince of Wales, but long before that. Twice when she had failed to find it, she had the courage to continue her search. To thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, though constant not then befalls to any man. Her rise from absurdity was of the slow, progressive, persistent order, but it was sure. She triumphed over unbelievably long odds, and no matter who you are or what you may think of Wallis Simpson, or the king who gave up his crown for her love, she is an outstanding example of applied persistence, an instructor on the rules of self-determination, from whom the entire world might profitably take lessons. When you think of Wallis Simpson, think of one who knew that she wanted and shook the greatest empire on earth to get it. Women who complain that this is a man's world, that women do not have an equal chance to win, owe it to themselves to study carefully the life of this unusual woman who, at an age which most women consider old, captured the affections of most desirable bachelor in the entire world. And what of King Edward? What lessons may we learn from his part in the world's greatest drama of recent times? Did he pay too high a price for the affection of the woman of his choice? Surely no one but he can give the correct answer. The rest of us can only conjecture. This much we know: the king came into the world without his own consent. He was born to great riches without requesting them. He was persistently sought in marriage. Politicians and statesmen throughout the Europe tossed dowagers and princes at his feet. Because he was the firstborn of his parents, he inherited a crown which he did not seek and perhaps did not desire. For more than 40 years he was not a free agent, could not live his life in his own way, had but little privacy, and finally assumed duties inflicted upon him when he ascended the throne. Some will say, with all these blessings, King Edward should have found peace of mind, contentment, and joy of living. The truth is that back of all the privileges of a crown, all the money, the fame, and the power inherited by King Edward, there was an emptiness which could be filled only by love. His greatest desire was for love. Long before he met the Wallis Simpson, he doubtless felt his greatest universal emotion tugging at the string of his heart, beating upon the door of his soul and crying out for expression. And when he met a kindred spirit crying out for this same holy privilege of expression, he recognized it and without fear or apology opened his heart and bade it enter. All the scandal mongers in the world cannot destroy the beauty of this international drama through which two people found love and had the courage to face open criticism, renounce all else to give the holy expression. King Edward's decision to give up the crown of the world's most powerful empire for the privilege of going the remainder of the way through life with the woman of his choice was a decision that required courage. The decision also had a price, but who has the right to say the price was too great? Surely not he who said, "He among you who is without sin, let him cast the first stone." As a suggestion to any evil-minded person who chooses to find fault with the Duke of Windsor because his desire was for love and for openly declaring his love for Wallis Simpson and giving up his throne for her, let it be remembered that the open declaration was not essential. He could have followed the custom of clandestine liaison which he prevailed in Europe for centuries without giving up either his throne or the woman of his choice, and there would have been no complaint from either church or laity. At this unusual man was built up a sterner stuff. His love was clean, it was deep and sincere. It represented the one thing which above all else he truly desired, therefore he took what he wanted and paid the price demanded. If Europe had been blessed with more rulers with the human heart and the traits of the honesty of ex-King Edward, for the past century the unfortunate hemisphere now seeing with greed, hate, lust, political connivance and threats of war would have a different and a better story to tell. A story in which love and not hate would rule. In the world of Stuart Austin, where we raise our cup and drink this toast to ex-King Edward and Wallis Simpson. Blessed is the man who has come to know that our muted thoughts are our sweetest thoughts. Blessed is the man who, from the blackest depths, can see the luminous figure of love and singing, say, "Sweeter far than uttered lays are the thoughts I have of you." In these words would we pay tribute to the two people who, more than all others of modern times, have been the victims of criticism and the recipients of abuse because they find life's greatest treasure and claimed it. Mrs. Simpson read and approved this analysis. Most of the world will applaud the Duke of Windsor and Wallis Simpson because of their persistence in searching until they found life's greatest reward. All of us can profit by following their example in our own search for which we demand of life. What a mystical power gives to men of persistence the capacity to master difficulties. Does the quality of persistence set up in one's mind some form of spiritual, mental or chemical activity which gives one access to supernatural forces? Does infinite intelligence throw itself on the side of the person who still fights on after the battle has been lost, with the whole world on the opposing side? These and many other similar questions have arisen in my mind as I have observed men like Henry Ford, who started at scratch and built an industrial empire of huge proportions with little else in the way of beginning but persistence. Or Thomas A. Edison, who with less than 3 months of schooling became the world's leading inventor and converted persistence into the talking machine and moving picture machine and incandescent light, to say nothing of half a hundred other useful inventions. I had the happy privilege of analyzing both Mr. Edison and Mr. Ford year by year over a long period of years, and therefore the opportunity to study them at close range. So I speak from actual knowledge when I say that I found no qualities save persistence in either of them than even remotely suggested the major source of their stupendous achievements. As one makes an impartial study of the prophets, philosophers, miraclemen, and religious leaders of the past, one is drawn to the inevitable conclusion that persistence, concentration of effort, and the definiteness of purpose were the major sources of their achievements. Consider, for example, the strange or fascinating story of Muhammad. Analyze his life, compare him with men of achievement in this modern age of industry and finance, and observe how they have one outstanding trait in common: persistence. If you are keenly interested in studying the strange power which give potency to persistence, read a biography of Muhammad, especially the one by Asad Bey. This brief review to that book by Thomas Sergey in the Herald Tribune will provide a preview of the rare treat in the store of those who take the time to read the entire story of one of the most astounding examples of the power of persistence known to civilization. The Last Great Prophet, reviewed by Thomas Sergey. Muhammad was a prophet, but he never performed a miracle. He was not a mystic. He had no formal schooling. He did not begin his mission until he was 40. When he announced that he was the messenger of God, bringing the word of the true religion, he was ridiculed and labeled as a lunatic. Children tripled him and women threw filth upon him. He was banished from his native city, Mecca, and his followers were stripped of their worldly goods and sent into the desert after him. When he had been preaching 10 years, he had nothing to show for it but banishment, poverty, and ridicule. Yet before another 10 years had passed, he was a dictator of all Arabia, ruler of Mecca, and head of the new world religion, which was to sweep the Danube and Pyrenees before exhausting the impetus he gave it. The impetus was threefold: the power of words, the efficacy of prayer, and man's kinship with God. His career never made sense. Muhammad was born to impoverish members of a leading family of Mecca, because Mecca, the crossroads of the world, home of the magic stone called the Kaaba, great city of trade and the center of the trade routes, was unsanitary. Its children were sent to be raised in the desert by Bedouins. Muhammad was thus nurtured, drawing strength and health from the milk of a nomad, vicious mothers. He tended sheep and soon hired out to a rich widow as a leader of her Karanwas. He traveled to all parts of the Eastern world, talked with many men of diverse beliefs, and observed the decline of Christianity into warring sects. When he was 28, Khadija the widow looked upon him with favor and married him. Her father would have objected to such a marriage, so she got him drunk and held him up while he gave up the parental blessing. For the next 12 years, Muhammad lived as a rich and respected and very shrewd trader. Then he took to wandering in the desert, and one day he returned with the first verse of the Quran and told Khadija that he actually had appeared to him and said that he was to be the messenger of God. The Quran, the revealed word of God, was the closest thing to a miracle in Muhammad's life. He had not been a poet, he had not a gift of words, yet the verses of the Quran, as he received them and recited them to the faithful, were better than any verses which the professional poets of the tribes could produce. This of the Arabs was a miracle. To them, the gift of words was the greatest gift. The poet was all powerful. In addition, the Quran said that all men were equal before God. All men were equal before God. That the world should be the democratic state Islam. It was this political heresy plus Muhammad's desire to destroy all the 360 idols in the country yard of Kaaba, which brought about his banishment. The ideals brought the desert tribes to Mecca, and that meant trade. So the businessman of Mecca, the capitalist of which he had been one, set upon Muhammad. Then he retreated to desert and demanded sovereignty over the world. The rise of the Islam began. Out of the desert came a flame which would not be extinguished. A democratic army fighting as a unit and prepared to die without wincing. Muhammad had invited the Jews and Christians to join him, for he was not building a new religion. He was calling all who believed in one God to join in a single faith. If the Jews and Christians had accepted his invitation, Islam would have conquered the world. They didn't. They would not even accept Muhammad's innovations of human warfare. When the armies of the Prophet entered Jerusalem, not a single person was killed because of his faith. When the Crusades entered the city, the centuries later, not a Muslim man, woman, or a child was spared. But the Christians did accept one Muslim idea, the place of learning, the university. That's it as per as today's episode of this very special book Think and Grow Rich, which is written by Napoleon Hill is concerned. तो चलिए मिलते हैं with the next episode of this very special book, which is part 4 and which includes almost 3 chapters of this very special book Think and Grow Rich, which is written by Napoleon Hill. तब तक हंसते रहिए, मुस्कुराते रहिए, कुछ अच्छा सुनते रहिए. अगर आपको बाहर जाने की ज़रूरत पड़ रही है तो प्लीज़ wear your mask and maintain social distancing and wash your hands intermittently with either soap or sanitizer. Okay, thank you so much all of you for connecting with us, and already you are knowing that in order to encourage our efforts or in order to appreciate the efforts taken by our team, please do subscribe to our channel and share this video with as many people as you can, and I'm pretty much sure that you are going to help us in reaching over 1 million people with this Think and Grow Rich book. Thank you so much in advance for that. And myself along with my team are really grateful for all of you for showering so much love for this Read With Me show. Thank you so much all of you once again for connecting with us. Have a great day ahead. Thank you so much once again. Appreciate our efforts by subscribing to our channel. Thank you.